Hello and welcome to the No Gimmies podcast. We are doing our last NBA division preview today, which is so exciting. But we have a few things that we want to get to first. There's been a few happenings around the MNBA and the WNBA. It's playoff season in the WNBA. We could not be more excited to talk about that. But first, I want to introduce my co-host, as always, Aaron Bullwinkle, living out there in the land of the Aces. How you feeling out in Vegas?
I mean, as an Aces fan, I'm feeling amazing, which, for our listeners has been somewhat of a roller coaster ride this season. But really, since July 27th, we've been on quite the amazing run here. So it's
16-game winning streak, I believe.
17 games now. If you
17.
And really 19 out of 20, which is the other thing that hasn't really the streak's been so good that people haven't talked about the fact that they lost one game and won the two prior as well. So really this dominance is going longer than that. More importantly, against a Seattle team who their offense was going to be a concern for me. The Aces did what they needed to do and put up big numbers. As long as they feel comfortable scoring, Seattle's got no chance in this series. And just real quick, Melissa Smith, who I had kind of shouted out on separate forums, did all the things that we were talking about. I thought her energy early was so key to kind of spiriting the Aces. I mean, Asia's always going to bring it, but it's the other players, Chelsea Gray and Alyssa Smith, having a lot of energy early on, I think made this Aces team just seem already focused and ready out the gate, which was wonderful.
Well, I can't wait to hear your analysis about it. I'm super excited to talk about it. We're jumping ahead a little bit.
Yeah, sorry, I got more into it than it felt good.
It happens. It feels good. If it feels good, let it ride.
Yeah.
But I did want to touch real quick on the Kawhi Leonard situation because a lot has happened since the last time you and I recorded a podcast. I did finally get the opportunity to listen to what is now 3 episodes of Pablo Torre Finds Out, where he just keeps uncovering more and more information about this alleged cap circumvention between the Clippers and Kawhi Leonard and Aspiration, this tree planting company. Aaron, my first question is, where are the trees?
Yeah, where are the trees?
Where are the damn trees?
I think Jason Concepcion had made that joke as well on the Simmons podcast, and that was a pretty good one.
Did he really?
Yeah.
Now I'm stepping all over his game.
I felt like he needed to be credited for it just because, but it was, I mean, seriously, where are the trees? This whole,
can I make a joke that I don't think Concepcion make? There are trees. They're Kendrick Lamar's money trees, and Kawhi Leonard's been basking in the shade of them.
Yes.
In your face, Jason. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Speaking of Kendrick Lamar, shout out to, I can't remember who it was that accidentally called Terrence Crawford Kendrick Lamar at an award show in the Chiron. That felt topical since Terrence Crawford.
He's Terrence Thornton. I'm Terrence Crawford. Yeah, I'm whooping feet.
Back to this. Obviously, anybody who's been tracking the Pablo Torre story, it's wild the layers and levels to all of this and the amount of intrigue. When I was talking to Law Murray on the podcast last week, I kind of referred to it as inputs because it just feels like there's so many different strings and things tethered now to this core impropriety, and trying to untangle it all is wild for us, but also it's interesting because I think, I've talked before that whatever the NBA does here, now it feels like they're definitely going to have to do something, but now I'm fully expecting them to kick the can down the proverbial alley as for as long as they can and hide behind the shield of it's an ongoing investigation, because I don't think they want to have to contend with this at All-Star break. So for as wild as all this is, and unless Pablo keeps doing what he's doing, which is there's no reason not to expect it, but I think that the more convoluted this gets, the tale of two Dennises and all those things, it actually emboldens the NBA to try to make this a situation where they hope that the opacity of their side of it helps it kind of go away once the season starts. That's just me kind of projecting.
Well, I mean, I think it's no secret that the further you can kind of kick the can down the road, as you said, the less, I guess the more time that you give a story air to breathe, it kind of takes the air out of the story itself. People move on. There's other things that will come up. There's other stories that will be pursued and published and talked about. So yeah, I mean, hiring a big law firm, which is, got a lot of teeth. From what I understand, this is a very good, like, investigative law firm. It's the kind of firm you'd hire if you're really looking for wrongdoing and not just the perception of looking for wrongdoing. And I kept thinking about this quote that I heard a long time ago, and I don't remember the exact origin of it, but it basically said that if the penalty for breaking the law is a fine, then that law only applies to the lower class. So when people are talking about the possible punishments for the Clippers, because that's the real conversation that we're talking about here. Because as the story goes on, the clearer it's become that this thing has legs. And so now it's really just deciding, how much did Steve Ballmer know? How much did the Clippers organization know? How in the loop was Kawhi Leonard? And based on the severity and the depths in which that is discovered, that is going to determine the punishment. Although there are maximum punishments that can be served under the CBA, but
Yes and no, though, because I've heard
are there special circumstances?
Yeah, not necessarily contradicting, but I think Adam Silver does still have a certain level of power here, where he can act above what just the wording was in that clause that everybody had been citing in this circumstance. Don't quote me on that, but obviously there's been so much information coming out here. But I had heard that somewhere, that it's not necessarily as limiting as that one little section said in terms of what he may be able to do.
Okay.
So that could change this conversation. You and I have we talked about this the last time, and my concern, and still is, what the severity of the punishment's really going to look like in the context of the Clippers. And you're bringing it up, like, if you find this guy $10 million, find this guy $20 million, that really means nothing. The figure is significant, and it should mean something to everybody, but this owner is so insanely rich, it's just different. It's not like hitting somebody that owns a smaller market, or
Yeah.
whose foundation of their wealth is more based upon something like $6 billion, $10 billion, whatever.
There are some lesser. I mean, I know this is all relative, but there are teams in this league that are owned by ownership groups, or at least majority owners who are rich by every conceivable standard, but they're not Steve Ballmer rich. Very few people are Steve Ballmer rich. He's like the sixth richest person in the world. He's
on
about
books.
100
on the books.
about $150 billion.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. The size of the fine is less important than what the NBA can do to the Clippers personally, or to Steve Ballmer as an NBA governor.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's going to get to this point unless another very large hammer drops, or another shoe drops. But could they force a sale of the team? Could they ban him from the league? Could they? He just spent all that money building the Intuit Dome. I mean, nobody has enjoyed his personal riches more than the Clippers organization. They've got a brand new arena. They've got players that want to come and play for them. They've got one of the best coaches in the league. I mean, his money has bought them some. What's the word that I'm looking for? Well, go ahead. I can't think of what I'm trying to say.
I was just going to glom onto your thought, though, because it really extends beyond the money. And it's part of the reason why I think ultimately Silver, he's not handcuffed, but it's to his best interest to not get rid of Steve Ballmer full sale, right? Like, unless
unless something dramatic.
But what I was going to say is, it's also his proximity to other powerful figures who attend games just because of Steve Ballmer's presence.
I mean, Barack Obama sat next to him.
Yeah, exactly. So this guy is an owner, separate of the money that he literally is pouring into his organization, and then by proxy the league, he's bringing eyes and ears on his franchise and the league at large, who are there for other reasons. People come to the game because they want to see Steve Ballmer, but also, look, if Barack Obama's at the game, as he has been, that's going to bring a whole segment of interest and intrigue that's not tethered to sports. That is great for the NBA. And all of that matters in terms of Steve Steve Ballmer's place within the NBA's power structure and power dynamic, he is very high in terms of owners as to what he means to the NBA. And so that really has to be a part of this. I want to get into the particulars for just a second. I mean, most people know these, but I just want your opinion of some of these things, because thinking this all out is still wild. But the Dennis Wong thing, and for those that don't know, well, after, Ballmer's whole shield has been, he didn't know he got grifted. This was an organization that had defrauded plenty of people, including himself. So that's why the $50 million. But once, that happened, you can kind of fall behind that if that was the only injection of cash. But then we have this period where Dennis Wong gives a sum of money, $2 million, where Kawhi is getting paid $1.85 million. And this is after a whole series of firings, and that we now know the organization is going bankrupt. And then that $10 million from Ballmer that comes in afterwards, I'm interested from your standpoint. That feels to me, because the NBA's CBA dictates that they don't literally need a smoking gun, right? Like, they just have to have enough smoke for the presumption of fire. That feels like a hell of a lot of smoke. That second one. I mean, the Dennis Wong thing's crazy because he's what is he? He's one of the
he's one of the minority owners of
board of governors,
and he's Ballmer's college roommate,
former college roommate. So he can't claim, there's no longer a degree of separation. He's known this guy for 50 years. Yes, they went to school together in the 70s, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, Ballmer's. Yeah, I mean, that's what you're talking about. Decades of friendship, and this guy's now involved in his dealings directly. And I think I've heard a few things about, like him trying to create these layers. What you're saying is absolutely correct. That's direct involvement. Yeah. If that's what that money was for, and they won't be able to prove that directly, but it's the timing of all of this is incredibly suspicious. I mean, somebody on Reddit pointed out that before that $2 million payment, Kawhi had been sitting out a lot of games and then played like almost 80% of the games after that payment went through. So, I mean, yes, is that like you said, that's smoke, that's mirrors. And like, if Kawhi is sincerely that petty over $2 million, that he'd be like, yeah, my knee hurts again. It's inflaming. It's amazing to me that we haven't heard one word out of Kawhi Leonard's camp. It's amazing to me that he's not made one statement about it.
It also is indicting in and of itself, because the thing is, if this had been a back channel deal by Uncle Dennis and or Kawhi, and I think the people that are bringing up Uncle Dennis working without Kawhi's knowledge is an interesting premise here. But if any of those things were happening, then technically there's not really any impropriety that the Clippers would be involved in. So Uncle Dennis and Kawhi could kind of quash so many. I mean, there's obviously still be an investigation and there'd still be a lot of conversation. But if they just said, we made a deal with them exclusive of the Clippers, this would feel kind of like that would.
It takes one statement from him, the same way the Clippers made a statement.
Just put the whole thing away.
They were like, hey, the Clippers had nothing to do with this. Steve Ballmer had no direct knowledge. We've never done cap circumvention. And Kawhi could have just come out and said the exact same thing. But he's chosen not to. And it's not because he's not been around. He was just at the US Open.
Yeah.
He was just there.
Yeah.
So it's not like is no one sticking a microphone in this guy's face? Not one person's around, not one reporter. No one's around to be like, hey, we should go ask Kawhi about this. No one's done that? That seems crazy.
Kawhi Leonard I'm so excited for when the biography, if somebody can get in enough of the crevices that comes out, because there are layers upon layers of interest in this man. And when I was talking to Law and I made the comment about Kawhi being quiet, his laugh and his response felt so loaded just in terms of like that misconception. And I didn't mean it literally in terms of just a quiet figure in general. I meant more in kind of how we know him in the media spaces. But there's so much drama that follows this man all the time. And he has just kind of been able, because he doesn't do media stuff, to skirt by it and not really be held accountable for the fact that like he has been a source of problem for organizations for like 8 years running now, basically since 2018.
I mean, you could go back even further about his, trying to get away from the Spurs, like
Well,
even
the
before.
Spurs kind of really started in 2017, 2018. That's what I'm saying. So that's about an
Well,
8-year run.
is that what you're thinking? Because I thought it started earlier than that. I thought it started after the 2014 champion, or the 2014
Oh,
championship.
no, no, no. They were good because remember, he was defensive player of the year with the Spurs, I believe, in 17 and
Yeah,
18. It was really I think the end of the 17 through the 18 season is when, and who knows when it started, but I feel like
yeah, and
that's
then
when we
that
started.
like the real the the quizzical injuries, that like team doctors kept saying like we can't find anything wrong with him. He
Yeah.
keeps saying it's like I don't know what he ultimately ended up like saying that injury was with the Spurs, but it was like a very tough injury for a team doctor to diagnose, which
I,
seems sketchy.
I will say, because of the way this man's body is broken down, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt at any point of him presuming injury
Fair.
because he's injured all the damn time. It'd be different if it was, somebody that either when Pippen held off to get the surgery or did one of those.
Right.
This isn't that to me. This is more a matter of a guy who's like hurt all the time, and that probably started this. But
I was
your
trying to
point just about like it just a lot around Kawhi feels shady, feels harsh, and Uncle Dennis may be a part of casting that kind of dark hue over the stuff. But
is it lighter to say like intentionally misleading?
yeah, I mean that's just
It,
basically synonymous with shady, right? Like we're
yeah,
just
but like
yeah.
yeah, but it's like it's misleading, but like
But you're
but
right.
like it seems like it's orchestrated on purpose. Like he's like, look, man, I got my own doctors, I got my own thing. I don't need anybody, like I don't need team people. I'll show up whenever I'm ready, which is such a weird way, but it's whatever you are that good. I guess I mean, even when you're not around, they could still put up with his bullshit and they don't seem to mind it as much because when he is playing, he's one of the most dominant players in the game.
I mean, he didn't even look fully healthy in that
And he was
Nuggets
a
series. He
monster.
was he was an absolute. Yeah, I mean, look, for the spurts that he's on the floor for any sustained period of time, he's one of the 7 best players in the league, probably.
There you go.
But
That's why the Clippers seem to think that he's worth all this headache and trouble, even though he hasn't brought anything to the Clippers organization but headaches.
here's the
And
crazy thing to me is if the NBA goes one of the nuclear options and they void Kawhi's contract, one, does everybody go after Kawhi, or is it look, we're tired of the tainted goods thing? And two, are the Clippers actually upset with that outcome?
mm, it depends on how they view this team right now. Because they did go out and get a bunch of free agents in the idea or in the vein of we think we can compete with a championship with this roster, or we have so much money committed to the players that are on this team, we have no choice but to try and compete for a championship. But like, does that make is that if they get that deal voided and they have all this cap space, I mean that means that something very, very bad has happened. And that means that I also don't think Steve Ballmer's there. I at least think he's being suspended for a year. If
Yeah.
Kawhi's contract gets voided, Ballmer's getting some sort of repercussion there. And like I try to think about like, is there any other like sports owner that's ever been like banned by the league?
Yeah.
Like,
George Stein,
I was just thinking Steinbrenner back in the '70s, but like
Steinbrenner, Glenn Taylor,
Glenn Taylor.
yeah.
That's the other one. I
Yeah,
was trying
I
to
mean
think if there was another example of
Sterling,
this.
obviously.
Yeah, I mean that was a forced sale thing, but it was like he didn't
No,
have
but I
to.
mean he
But
got suspended from the league too. Remember, he had to stay away from the
yeah,
team.
but Sarver,
That was kind of the thing about the forced sales. Technically, they didn't force him to sell. They just made it such an onerous situation
yeah,
where he was no longer the owner.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, did they suspend Sarver too,
I
or was
don't.
that?
I
I
think
don't
Sarver
remember.
got out before any of that stuff would have fallen because they
I think
sold the
you're
team in the
probably right.
offseason.
Yeah, I was
But
just trying to think of like
I
in
mean,
any
no,
other sport.
that story came out during the regular season. I'm not sure if Sarver got suspended or not. I think he did.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, basketball's got 3 of the 4 owners getting suspended, or 2 of the 3 that I
When
can think of.
it was who was the racist owner for the Reds? Marge Schott. Do you remember her?
Yeah, I remember.
Did she get suspended? I feel like
I was
Marge
also
Schott.
thinking. I wanted to think that like Jerry Richardson from the the
Yeah, we can
Panthers.
probably. It's
We have to
probably
put a little
not.
bit more work into that.
Yeah, it's probably actually not as rare as we think it is, because so often these people are people that have gotten rich through improprieties in business and usually are very arrogant. So
Yeah,
those two circumstances lead to bad behaviors, and usually real bad behavior business wise and in terms of how they're comporting themselves. So I bet we can
yeah.
find a decent list of owners that have missed some time. Yeah,
Well,
but
this is the
it's
tip
very
off.
noteworthy nonetheless.
Yeah, this is the tip off. I like to try and limit it to, about 20 minutes of conversation. So I just want to leave you with one last question and then we can move on to the WNBA. Do you want to revise what you think is going to happen to Steve Ballmer in light of the fact that the last time you and I talked, we did not have all this new information? Do you have an idea or a guess or a thought about how you think he's going to ultimately be punished by the league?
I think that the most likely outcome is still some combination of significant fine and draft picks.
I do too.
I don't think he's going to get suspended. If he does
And
get
I don't think
suspended,
Kawhi that his contract will get voided. I don't
and
think
if he
that.
does get suspended, I would fully expect nothing to come out until after the All-Star break. So probably not until next. Like they'll find kind of a period maybe where they can bury the story into something. So maybe it just as the playoff, like whenever the Clippers are eliminated from the playoffs or some stretch that they have post All-Star break, they just don't want this story to have, if it has resolution in any direction, it becomes still a storyline that can kind of be regurgitated come All-Star break. And I think they'll do anything they can to avoid that. So it's going to kind of grow dormant unless Pablo keeps coming in it. Like this is my favorite thing is how these people are challenging Pablo Torre as though he didn't thoroughly show his work. And so
when he was filming the podcast, he had 4,000 documents on the table. Did they think those were blank pieces of paper?
Well, because
he's done his research.
We live in this era now where it's like 5,000 pieces of data versus one piece of like questionable, however, conjecture or whatever. That always becomes a thing. It's like the benefit of the doubt is always thrown towards doubt, even if it's completely outweighed by substance. And that's crazy to me. But also stop challenging Pablo Torre because this dude is enjoying like putting them to it. And that last one felt like
he's a nerd. He's a sports nerd.
This is
they love this shit.
Watching this man work is like watching like Mozart put together a symphony, like seeing it in real time over the course, the way he's built it.
Bringing on Mark Cuban. Yeah, bringing on Mark Cuban to get his perspective, finding more documentation, doing 3 podcasts in a row based on new information that he discovered, and also laying it out in a very like theatrical way on the podcasts, where he also invited Amin, a former executive, and David Sampson.
That's what I was going to say. The people on the dais is perfect, right? Yes. Like that is, it's such a brilliant way to do that because these people can now.
He has a lawyer reading lawyer documents. He has a contractual.
Who was part of an ownership group for an organization, right?
Yeah, and then he's got a guy who was an executive, and he's like, I've never heard of anything like this.
Yeah,
I've never been in a situation where I've heard. It's beautiful.
Yeah,
I will say I didn't listen to the Bill Simmons one, but I did listen to Howard Beck and Zach Lowe. Yeah. And I did find out that, funny enough, Ballmer's on the ethics committee for the board of governors. And I just think that that's hilarious.
I did know that.
I did not.
Both friends of the pod.
Absolutely. Friends of the pod. They always have been.
Yeah.
Everyone knows, and if you doubt us, you have to ask them directly. Are they friends of the pod?
Howard Beck has been on the Basketball Intelligence Network. That's all I'm saying.
Right.
We have shared podcast space.
What up, Beck? All right. Now we need to move on because we are a little late. We wanted to record last week. Aaron and I both had crazy schedules. We are late to the WNBA playoffs. They are seeded. They have started. We had our first round of games this weekend. Aaron, before we do what we're going to call a preview, even though they've already begun, we are going to go and name all the winners predict all the winners that we think are the way they're going to finish. But I did want to ask Aaron, your initial thoughts on the games from this weekend. Is there anything that stood out to you, just an observation or two from each series? And I want to start with the Lynx and the Valkyrie, the 1-8 matchup.
I'm going to preface this by pumping myself really quickly because most people that are on here are probably
I don't think
subscribed to
that's
a couple.
allowed on the podcast, man. I think
I think
we're gonna.
most people that are subscribed here are probably featured or subscribed to one of my other things. But I did a basketball preview in written form on my newsletter, and I'll put that in the show notes. I also did a preview with Bob Bellotti a couple days before. So we'll build on some of that information in here. But now getting back to the matchups and what I saw. Obviously, I already talked about the Aces Storm. I was very excited, so I'll leave that one alone. Getting into the Valkyries Lynx series, it looked exactly like I expected to. This Lynx team is just going to be a buzzsaw, and the Valkyries don't have enough offensive firepower to stay in this series with a team in the Lynx that's not going to be frustrated by the Valkyries swarming defense. And that's what it looked like, particularly in the second half. The Lynx go off for 32 points in the third quarter. Shout out to Natasha Heidemann, who has been on an absolute, or Natisha, I do that all the time, sorry. Natisha Heidemann, who's been on an absolute tear over like her last 6 games. She had 18 yesterday. She's not going to win Sixth Player of the Year. Naz Hillman, who's actually started about 40% of her team's games, will. But I think Natisha Heidemann should actually be the winner and is just another player that exemplifies a Lynx roster that has an insane amount of depth.
Yeah, I mean, you got this juggernaut team. They've been amazing all year. They're number one in defensive rating. They are number 2 in made 3-pointers. One thing that I did when I was looking up some stats about this series that I was going to share with you last week, the Valkyrie are number 1 in made 3-pointers this year, but they needed 200 more attempts than the Lynx, who are number 2, which is just but crazy. But this Valkyrie defense, which has been stingy all year, going up, they're number 1 in 3-point percentage, opponent 3-point percentage. The Lynx are number 1 in 3-point percentage in the league. So, everything that the Valkyrie is good at, the Lynx are better at the other side of that coin. It's a 1-8 matchup for a reason. The Valkyrie have no reason to hang their heads. They've had an amazing season. This is their first year as a franchise, and they made the playoffs. They're going to have the coach of the year. They have a very bright future in front of them. But yeah, this Lynx team is they're just a buzzsaw. Like you said, there's just nothing that you can really do against a team that feels like it's a team of destiny. That's why they're the number 1 overall seed.
Yeah, the talent disparity, the Valkyrie, I've brought this up a few times. Their greatest strength is going to be what they do defensively in their 3-point shooting, because those are going to be effort, and the variability, of the 3-point shot can be an equalizer for a talent deficit. That's not going to matter against the Lynx. The Lynx aren't going to be a team that's necessarily outplayed. And when they do get outplayed, and we've seen this all season with them, they recalibrate and find that level. They've had a lot of second halves where all of a sudden they've not necessarily turned on a switch. They've just turned up the intensity. And this is what you saw. And the Valkyries just don't have that level that they can get to. It's not a knock on them. They've been up to the task. This is not, they're going out on their shield. All puns intended, despite the fact that this will be a sweep as far as I'm concerned. But this whole season and even their effort here, like, it's just, you run up at some point, you come up against an kind of something that you can't overcome just because of your circumstances. And this is the Valkyries' reality. And that sounds more dismissive than I mean for it to be of them. It's really just a reflection of what I think this Lynx group is in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, I think you and I have them both winning the series in 2 pretty handily. I do want to jump now to the 4-5 matchup, who the Lynx will face in the second round, and I want to talk about the Liberty and the Mercury. So the Liberty take game 1, but 76-69, but during that game, they lose Breanna Stewart to a knee injury, her left knee, that she kind of came down awkwardly after making an and one, and she was subbed out shortly after that. There is no status update on Breanna Stewart. She's getting an MRI, and so far, all I've heard is that they hope that she will be available for game 2, which is on Wednesday. What did you see, Liberty versus Phoenix? It's a pretty fun matchup.
It was. I will say this was a pitcher's duel. If you came to this game for offense, This was some ugly offense, and that was not because of poorly played offense. It was just both teams really brought defensive energy. I thought Okoye Makani was excellent in the fourth quarter and overtime, guarding Sabrina Ionescu. Besides her having good numbers, I thought Natasha Mack really battled against Jonquel Jones. I thought Elisa Thomas and Brittany Stewart were given as good as they were getting.
Yeah.
The Liberty, what they did defensively to Alyssa Thomas, I thought was great from a strategic standpoint. They gave her the Giannis treatment where they really sagged back on her and made her have to choose whether or not she was going to shoot that kind of midi floater that she likes instead of getting into the teeth of the defense. She started to figure it out later on in the game, but I thought it was a really smart play by a big Liberty team that can afford to absorb her trying to get into the paint. And I thought it threw off the rhythm of the Mercury. Satu Sabali was 0 for a million in the middle of that game, and it's interesting to think what that game looks like, maybe if she gets going. But at the end of this looked like I expected it to. I thought this was going to be the most competitive series. I put in my notes, this features 8 players that have made multiple All-Star games, which is just crazy to think about the amount of talent. And Natasha Cloud, who I thought was going to get up against her former team, was the best player on the floor in terms of dictating pace, getting into the teeth of the defense, and just making big shots.
Yeah, dropped 23, led the Liberty in scoring. Phoenix had 2 victories over the Liberty during the regular season, but both of those were without Jonquel Jones. Now they're going to be missing Breonna Stewart, so it's going to be an interesting kind of matchup there. Now it's going to be a real question about how the Liberty take on Alyssa Thomas without Breonna Stewart, if she is in fact out for game 2 or an extended amount of time throughout this. Before this series started, I had the Liberty in 3. Did you have it the same way?
I had the same, and I fully expected this game to go down to the fourth quarter of the third game, and for whatever team to prevail, me picking the Liberty to
I really thought it was a pick 'em.
Yeah, and I thought the Liberty were going to look beat up coming out of this series. And that wasn't me predicting a Breonna Stewart injury, but I just thought this series was going to be played at the level that we saw yesterday in a way that's going to exhaust, even as a 3-game series, 2 teams that are, the Liberty aren't top heavy, but they were top heavy yesterday, which was a little weird. Their bench played very poorly and all their starters played 35 plus minutes. I had seen somebody on Threads, I can't accredit it, say that they thought that was on Sandy Brondello. I didn't agree with that. I thought the bench looked sluggish and kind of out of sorts when they first came in. Now, they may not have gotten enough time to figure out, and I think part of that was both teams were really stretching their starting lineups because they knew how important this game was. You lose the first game, the way these series go, you lose the first game, if you're Phoenix, which they did, you forfeit home court immediately because now we go back to New York. Because now it's 1-1-1 instead of when it used to be 2-1. So it really changes kind of the intensity of that first game for that the home team.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And like I said, it's really tough to go on the road in a very good atmosphere in New York and beat a team that's got championship medal the way that New York does. So you really wanted to make that statement in game 1 rather than wait for game 3. But, I think you got to take advantage of home court. It's going to be interesting, like I said, if there is no Breonna Stewart, how the Liberty adjusts. I think the Mercury will have a decided advantage in that they will have less front court pressure. Someone that's more of they're going to have more open driving lanes, I feel like. So I'm going to be interested to see if they take advantage of that.
I will say one thing. Stewie wasn't on Alyssa Thomas the whole time. They actually opened with Jonquel Jones. So the Liberty do have the advantage of the fact that Emma Miesemann has been as good as they have been for them. And if she just slides into the starting position, even though Miesemann can physical with Alyssa Thomas, I don't like that matchup in space just in terms of foot speed. Miesemann's, she's fine. She's got good feet, but she doesn't move her feet particularly well out in space, whereas Jonquel can kind of compensate with her size and her length and staying in front. So they do at least have enough bodies that they can kind of reposition and have already had guard Alyssa, that helps. It just, of course, shortens the bench, but their bench, they have people in Johannes and Kennedy Burke who should be better than what we saw in game 1. That's just the reality.
100%
they
agree.
have been better. They've been very good players this year, and they just couldn't get going in this game.
So we both have New York taking that series 2-1. So let's go back to the Storm Aces series, since you already kind of brought it up a little bit earlier. You've got some obvious stakes in this game. I can tell by the championship banners behind you, the 2 championship banners. I should
Going for
say.
number 3.
Going for number 3. That's right. The hottest team in the league, the Las Vegas Aces, against one of the most confusing teams in the league in the Seattle Storm. Frustrating.
I don't. Yeah, frustrating is absolutely the fact. This has been one of my favorite stats. The Storm have not won more than 3 games in a row this entire year, and that tells you everything you need to know about what this organization has played like this season.
Can I give you one of my favorite stats about them?
Of course.
They lead the Storm. They led the league this year in total steals, total blocks, and total turnovers.
That sounds about right.
All 3. So like they're one of the best defensive teams in the league, but they're so inconsistent and they turn the ball over so much, and they'll have these stretches during the games where you're just like, it feels like a body swapping movie. It's like Space Jam happened to them. Like someone just sucked all their powers out of their bodies, and then they're just kind of out there, looking lost.
Last season when I did my NBA team reviews, I had a word for each team, and this word may have gotten cycled through then. I can't remember. It was a long time ago. But if I had to, the Storm would be disjointed.
That's one of my favorite words.
They just cannot seem to figure out how to get the pieces to fit together. Like it's maddening to watch when you understand the level, and especially the defensive stuff is so weird because that defense look, Onyeka Ogwumike has been an all defensive player multiple times. All right. Ezzy Magbagor, multiple times. Brittany Sykes, multiple times. Gabby Williams is in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year. And that's
one of my favorite players in the league.
Yeah, and Dominique Malonga, though still figuring things out, is switchable, long, all these things. And they
You don't have to tell me about Malonga.
They are not good on the defensive end anymore. I mean, even Skylar Diggins can compete defensively. Like she gets in. I don't know. I don't know like what the answer is for them even come off season, because again, you see this roster 1 through 7, it makes sense. I like the talent. You can see how it works, but is it the coach? Is it?
I was just about to ask you that. Do you think it's a coaching problem? And like, will the Storm address that in the offseason? If this series, I mean, I think we both have the Aces. Do you have them winning in 2 in this series?
Yeah, I originally had 3, and then Bob convinced me. I was like, "Yeah, what am I doing? No, it's Aces in 2."
I think you were trying to hedge and not be a homer, but like they're the hottest team in the league, and
it's not just that. I still keep convincing myself that this Storm team is going to be that same group we saw bring it to the Lynx in that third quarter a couple weeks ago. That team that we saw go into Atlanta and beat Atlanta. Like they just have those weird flashes where I'm like, there's going to be a dyspeptic moment of excellence, and like I need to give that up. Like I have to stop.
And I was trying to think of like an NBA comparison to them, and I was either thinking like the Clippers, but they're too old. But like they're a team that will convince you that they're like the best team in the league for stretches, and then like other stretches, you're like, what the hell was I thinking? And then it kind of reminded me a little bit of like maybe Houston. I was trying to think of like a good comparison for them. Like they're young, they got some young players, they got some vets, they're defensively minded, but they never quite been able to put it all together, and they were just missing like one key idea. Like the whole
but the problem is Houston finished second. It's almost more like an Atlanta situation for me.
Maybe it's that.
Where it's like Atlanta will have a run where everybody's like, they figured, like when they went to the NBA Cup. Like they're in the semifinals, and it felt like, okay, Atlanta's onto something. And we always look at the end of the year and they're 41-41. It's like that Seattle was 23-21, and they had to win 3 of their last 4, I think, to get over 5. Like I just have to stop. This is a me thing. And I respect what you're saying because I'm not trying to be a homer, but it's not just that. It's the Seattle group. I keep convincing myself that they're supposed to be this thing that they look like on paper, but they're just not in reality. And back to your original question. Jewel Lloyd probably thinks it's Noelle Quinn. I don't know enough about Noelle. Like I've seen the Storm play several times this year, and if I based my assumption of who she is as a coach on that, I would say that there does seem to be a disconnect with her and her players, both in terms of galvanizing them and kind of getting a coherent message through to them, because it doesn't feel like they're interlocking parts once again. It just kind of feels, and there's a weird energy to how this team plays. It's not quite indifference or apathy, but it's never that harmonious kind of buy-in. And if it's not the coach, then it's the players. And so that means I'm either wrong about what the roster looks like on paper, or the coach doesn't know how to coach this particular group, or maybe it's just a first year thing and it's a lot of new parts and next year it looks different. I don't want to like bury somebody because this is the first year of this group playing together like this. And that there is
That's
a
fair.
reality of that.
So you and I have the Aces winning that one, 2 out of 3, or 2 out of 2. And then the final series, we had the Dream and the Fever, the rebound 3-point heavy Atlanta Dream against the hobbled, beat up, limping into the playoffs Indiana Fever. I mean, credit to them for even getting this far into the playoffs and being a 6 seed.
Yeah, a 6 seed that's some insane work. Shout out Stephanie White. Like,
yes, she's been there for a long time. Sorry. Yeah, she came back for a reason. They brought her back for a reason.
Yeah.
She's a damn fine coach.
Yeah.
The Dream and the Fever. This one's tough, and the only thing that I really had for this was that everything that the Dream do well as far as 3-point shooting and rebounding are things that the Fever do not do well. They do not defend the 3-point shot well, and they do not rebound very well. So I had a huge edge. I was giving a huge edge to the Dream as is, and then when you look at all the injuries, it's just like I wanted to say this one was going to go 3, but I have the Atlanta in 2.
I still have it going 3.
Okay.
Just because I can see Indiana giving like kind of a valiant effort, but I don't think that I'd be scared going into game 3 for Atlanta. Like if Indiana were to win game 2, on the backs of their home crowd and playing like a really high energy game and maybe getting the Dream out of their stuff a little bit. You know, this game was competitive really until the Dream broke it open basically at the end of the third, early in the fourth. Now the Dream did what I expected them to do. This series for me more than anything is just an expression of some of my favorite players. And so I'm watching it as much for that. I get to watch Alicia Gray, watching Brianna Jones and Leah Boston battle down low, and the footwork that they use grafted on top of the physicality is so much fun. It's like Aaliyah Boston broke off this drop spin baseline fadeaway in like the first 2 minutes. That was beautiful. And it was just those two, the effort that they give and the way that they play, that's a lot of fun. It's a shame that this is a first round series with a beaten up Fever team. Had this been like, I would love to see this. Had this been 2 healthy teams in the second round, we really got to see how the coaches were going to adjust to each other. Carlos Zamesco as a first-year coach has done a great job, but I'm interested to see when he gets stress tested. That just won't be this series.
No Clark, no Cunningham, no McDonald, no Colson, no Bibby.
Thank God Odyssey Sims got back on the floor, though. When she went down, I was just like, God, can we just wave the white flag?
I do respect you for having to go in 3. I couldn't quite get there, but I wanted to get there. I want that to happen. So
I think part of it for me too, I'm just full transparency. It's hard for me to believe, considering the way that this regular season has gone with some surprise wins and things like that, that 3 of these 4 series are going to be sweeps. That just doesn't line with, I think and so maybe I'm kind of doing that for the sake of a false belief.
Some wishful thinking.
Yeah, and it's just if I had to pick, okay, I've got 3 series that I think would be sweeps. This would be the one that I think has the chance of at least, particularly after what we saw in game 1, of at least going 3, whereas the other 2, I don't really see any shot at this point.
Well, let's go ahead and finish out this thought exercise. So we would have the Lynx and the Liberty facing each other in the 1-4 matchup, a rematch of last year's amazing NBA Finals. How do you see that series going? And what are the key matchups that you're looking at as far as what's going to decide this series?
I mean, Breonna Stewart's health looms so large in this series because the Liberty just can't win this series without Breonna Stewart.
Absolutely not.
That is in no way meant to kind of devalue what this Liberty team is. But look, this Lynx group goes 8 deep, and it's like a legit 8 deep. Jessica Shepard is so good off that bench as a big, and she gets so little credit. I think she'll make an all-star game as a starter once she's given the opportunity and space to play. And so the Liberty have to be healthy at their big positions to be able to match up against the likes of Alana Smith, Nafisa Collier, Jessica Shepard, and that's separate of just all the good guard play that we're going to see on both sides in this series. But the Liberty overmatch, if Breanna Stewart plays, we'll work under that premise. Then I think the Lynx win this probably in 5, and it's a 5-game series because we're in the second round. If Breanna Stewart doesn't play, I take the Lynx in 4. Either way, I have the Lynx because I think the Lynx are locked in and ready for revenge. And the Liberty have just had to deal with. They haven't had an up. Look, this starting group that they have, the one that we started the year with, I think is 12-1 in the games that they start, but they just don't get to play together enough.
13 games. It's not much. Yeah, they just haven't really. You used the term disjointed earlier. They haven't been able to find that rhythm because of the injuries that they've had, and they kind of limped into the playoffs a little bit. I had the exact same way. I've got a 3-1 Liberty, 3-1 Liberty,
3-1 Lynx.
Lynx.
3-1 Lynx. I got you. You were good.
Yeah, if Breanna Stewart doesn't play, if she does, I have it 3-2, and I actually honestly think it goes just like chalk on the road or at home. I think that the Lynx.
Yeah, but but the Liberty have been kind of weird road and home this season, haven't they?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, but that's just they have such a great home court, especially in the playoffs. The atmosphere there is insane. So do the Lynx. I mean, they're incredible as well. Not taking anything away from them. We saw it last year in the finals. I have the Lynx rolling on to this. I mean, I have them winning the whole thing. Just to go ahead and jump right ahead, but. We do have the other series, and that's the Dream and the Aces, which is I think a little bit more tantalizing as far as matchup goes. I think there's some really fun matchups in that series.
Yeah, this one scares me. I'm going to be frankly honest.
It's fun.
Yeah, it scares me for a lot of reasons. Just because this Dream starting 5 is as good as any starting 5 in the league. Especially when you reincorporate Jordan Canada, and that's not a knock to Tahina Paopao, who played really well as a rookie, but Jordan Canada's just been in the league longer. She brings a dynamic element of speed to a Dream team that they like to get up and down, but they play really slow, particularly in the half court, and Canada just gives them more dimensionality. This is going to come down to how much offense the Aces can generate inside and what happens with the kind of interior play. Obviously, the Dream have Naz Hillman and Brianna Jones, who are great defensive players that'll kind of combine to deal with Asia. But the incorporation of Nalisa Smith is already talked about. And then Cheyenne Parker-Tyus, who's just come back and played 3 games, but has looked good and brings substantial size and intelligence. Not to mention there's a little bit of revenge factor since she played for Atlanta. So she's not going to be familiar with the system because it's a new coach, but she's going to be familiar with some of these players. I'm going to take the Aces in this series. I have the Aces in 4 in this. As long as Las Vegas is playing the level of defense that they're playing right now as this kind of connective, accountable group, I think they can overcome a Dream team that the guard play has been so good. I mean, Alicia Gray and Ryan Howard combined for 40 yesterday. They're the second highest scoring duo in the playoff. Yeah, and they're really complimentary just in terms of how they can hit you, because Ryan's perfectly comfortable catching and shooting from the 3. Alicia likes breaking down and getting into the intermediate and cracking through spaces. They're a lot of fun to watch there, but Chelsea's playing at a high level defensively right now, and Jackie's always great.
The Dream have this uncanny ability to just get really hot, especially from deep, where it can feel like an avalanche, which is why I think that a couple of games can be decided by those. It can feel really demoralizing because they play with a good amount of pace. Whenever they get on these runs, they hit shots that seem impossible, like they're hitting deep threes.
I was going to say they pull from range too. That's part of it.
They don't mind.
Ryan Howard's like, oh, that's about 6 feet away from the line. I got this. Bam.
If she's open, she's pulling. And
she doesn't need to be open to pull either. She is. And
it's not a bad shot when she shoots it. And that's the kind of player that you like. You're like, if she's pulling that shot, I'm like, I live and die with those results. I'm completely fine with that. I do think that the Aces have the slight edge, and I have this series going 3-2 Aces. So that means that we have an amazing finals matchup of the most dominant team of this decade and one of the most dominant teams of all time in the Lynx. And we get a Lynx Aces championship final. I know that you're a fan, but what are you looking at, and how do you think the series is going to go?
This makes me very nervous. It also makes me a little upset. I didn't buy my Aces playoff tickets this year because I've been traveling for work, and so I knew I was going to have issues. And so if it goes to the finals, I'll be there, but I won't have my seats, which makes me a little pissed off of myself. But that's a separate story.
Are you? Can I ask before you get? Are you like superstitious about your seats? Is it like a thing that like?
No.
I was just curious.
I like my seats and want to be guaranteed I'm in the building, but I will be there no matter what.
I'm a little stitious.
Yeah. Look, the Lynx in 7 is what I would believe, because I think the benefit of home court advantage, the fact that the Lynx are coming off of really having dominated the Aces for the better part of 2 years, so being completely comfortable with what they have to see. And even though the last time the Lynx beat the crap out of the Aces was what set this run off, and the Aces won a very big game that I was at, that they played 3 games before the end of the season, in which both teams were bringing their full effort. I just believe the Lynx have a little bit more in terms of their depth, their ability to figure out in a 7-game series kind of the push-pull dynamics, where to hit and not, that it'll work out that way in the end. But I'm saying, like, this could be just as good as that 5-game series was last year with the Liberty. I would not be surprised if this 7-game series looks like that too, where this is just, it's like the NBA Finals. We're looking at something that's coming down to the second half of the 7th game.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's completely fair to call this a pick'em and just take home court and call it 7 games. I'm going to be a little bit bolder, and I'm going to say it's going to be the Lynx in 6. I have it as a 4-2 series. I just think they've been so dominant on this run. I think the Aces are the hottest team coming into this playoff, and I completely understand. And I'm probably wrong in the fact that I'm probably underselling how good the Aces are, especially with their championship medal and their the great coaching that they have, and they have one of the most dominant players in the game. But everything that you can say that's complimentary about the Aces, you can say about the Lynx as well, and then some. There's a reason that like they've been this dominant all year. They were dominant even without Nafisa Collier, because you and I talked about this weeks ago. You take Asia Wilson off this team, and I think they crater. You took Nafisa Collier off, and they seemingly didn't miss a beat. They just kept winning.
I think I'm changing to the Aces in 7, actually, because as we have,
I respect this.
No, because as we have this conversation, the Asia of it all,
it's a big factor.
Asia, the way that she gets up to play against Nafisa Collier, and the level that she plays to, like, she can win this finals just on her own, and she doesn't have to, because Jackie will be what Jackie always is. Like, I love referring to her. She's just metronomic. Like, but Asia will come in and average like 35 and 15 in a finals. Like, actually, no, I'm going the homer route, and I'm taking the Aces in 7.
All right, I'm writing this down. I'm loving this.
I may eat those words, but like I don't want to bet against Asia Wilson. I'm not comfortable with that yet. I'm not ready to do that, considering what she has looked like over the course of, I mean, this is, you and I talked about this in like the first or second episode of this podcast, where I was waxing poetic about how spoiled I get to be to watch a player like this in her prime. And just the way that she approaches the game of basketball, especially, like, that you don't get to see people that bring it with that level of effort and passion on a night-to-night consistent basis at that level of talent very often. This is like this is, when you talk about a generation, I call her my GOAT. I mean, really, after she wins his 4th MVP, much like Jokic, she is now in the conversation of the all-time greats if her career ended right now. And I put her up against anybody easily, but I just, this is my rant for a moment, but we're really spoiled, and I'm very, very fortunate to get to watch somebody of this level play basketball at this level of basketball. It's crazy.
I completely agree. I think it's going to be a really fun series. I think it's going to be a really fun playoffs. I'm super excited to get to watch some of these games. I'm hoping that Breanna Stewart's here. I'm hoping everybody stays healthy and we get some great matchups. Support the W and pay the players. Let's keep it moving, because we do have one last preview to get to, and we're almost an hour in. So we saved the champs for last, their division, the Northwest Division and the Western Conference, the home of the Utah Jazz, the Portland Trail Blazers, the Denver Nuggets, the Minnesota Timberwolves, and the Oklahoma City Thunder. One of the most geographically nonsensical divisions you can possibly have.
Are you telling me Oklahoma's not in the Northwest?
They used to be, and I don't like to bring that up because I get yelled at a lot by people who get 300 days of rain. So they're not a happy people as it is. And even though I completely agree with them that the team was stolen, they still like to yell at me. But the only thing I can say to that is, we got one.
Yeah.
We got one. You've got one. I can't wait for Seattle to get a team so that they can boo us relentlessly for the rest of forever. So let's, give Seattle a team. They've earned it. There's a few places around here. Maybe that's Ballmer's punishment.
The
Just
Bomber,
take the Clippers to Seattle.
the Bomber news is going to come out sometime around the expansion release.
There you go.
That is how you bury that. You announce expansion, or you announce the Bomber stuff, and then like a couple days later, you announce expansion. They're going to package those somehow close enough in proximity that it helps bury the significance of the Bomber findings, and the expansion is what we're all talking about. They should
announce a huge fine and then have that money go to expansion teams.
Yeah.
to Las Vegas and Seattle, and just be like, okay, so you just got like $10 million each in free cash.
The only reason these greedy owners want expansion in the first place is the money in their pockets. They're not trying to have that money go another direction.
Yeah, but that's the other reason against expansion is they're not trying to share it with more owners. They're like, hey, let's slow down this expansion talk. There's already 30 of us. Why would we want 32?
If they can get $8 billion twice, if they're splitting $16 billion amongst themselves.
Yeah, but it's not about the initial money. It's about the revenue sharing going forward. Yeah, that's where they get greedy. They're like, well, we did just sign the $70 billion television rights deal. Why the hell would I give that money to some other guys? You could say they were going
to collapse a league by 10 teams and they'd still get greedy. So let's just
this is factual.
Yeah.
So obviously as we've been doing these previews, we start with the teams at the bottom and we work our way to the top. So we can go very quickly for me through this Utah Jazz team because as much as they say that they're no longer tanking and they're no longer losing and they're finally going to start playing competitive basketball, you take one look at this roster and tell me where the hell any kind of sensical team building or where any wins are going to come from. I dare you. Aaron, as he always does, gentleman that he is, he likes to write these nice little cheat sheets and previews. This is the projected starting five that he has listed for the Utah Jazz. Brace yourselves. Isaiah Collier, Keontae George, Ace Bailey, Lauri Markkanen, and Walker Kessler. Ugh.
So counterpoint, did you see Eurobasket?
Lauri Markkanen, the finisher's back. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Yeah. And actually, shout out Slim Jesus, who I saw 6 months ago at EYBL and was impressed at the time. Mira Makinen or whatever his name is. So going on to this Jazz roster, a couple things. I do believe that much like we saw 2 seasons ago, they're going to look a little plucky earlier because they're going to unleash Lowry and see if they can maybe trump up more of a trade market for him again, because I'm with you. Otherwise, if you're not trying to teach winning basketball to the players that you have that are young that you hope on keeping here, which Isaiah Collier probably fits in that. They need to figure out what Keontae George is. And Ace Bailey's a rookie. There's not a lot here that's going to be fodder for the energy to compete. Like they want to be hot. Like they want to keep their pick in this next draft. So they want to be bad again. So they want to make it hot. So all the other things that we heard when Austin Ainge got hired about being competitive don't really make sense. And then you look at the roster. I like Lauri Markkanen. I like Walker Kessler, and I like Kyle Filipowski.
I like Filipowski as well. They got players I like.
There's positional redundancy there, and you're hitting the point now where you're wasting Lowry if you're just going to keep kind of having him play 40 and 50 games a year. Now, granted, he never plays more than 60 games because he can't stay on the floor even when he is healthy. But they obviously
but how much of that is actual actual injury, and how much of that is the team just shelving him?
I mean, 5 out of 8 seasons he's been below 60 games. He never played 70 games in an 8-year career. So there is some of it that's separate of the Jazz, but they definitely stashed him as well. My point is just like I think they're going to win a few more games because this team will be plucky at moments, but it's not going to be a lot more. I have them winning a few more games because I think Lowry's going to play more early. I think Filipowski and Kessler are real players, and Kessler kind of refound himself in the second half of last year. Collier is probably over-leveraged as a full-time starter on a decent team, but he's going to get to explore the space, and Keontae George will get to go 6 for 27 a few times.
Yeah, well, here's my counterpoint to that. They Cody Williams had one of the worst rookie seasons of any lottery pick that I've ever seen
Yeah,
in recent history.
you want to talk about those slash lines really quickly?
I don't, but you
32,
can.
26, 73. That's, I mean, even by a rookie standards,
Oh,
that's rough.
man, Jalen Williams really did not set that kid up for success. His older brother just really put him in a position of like, well, we'll develop him, right? Just like the way the Thunder developed. No, they're not the same body type. They're not the same type of player. And Cody Williams, he was rougher around the edges than his brother was in college, even though he may have played at a bigger school and a bigger conference. It never looked the same way. Like the film on the two of them was it's night and day difference.
To your point, different players. Now their length is similar, pardon me, but Cody doesn't have the ability to put the same strength that Jalen does
And
into
he
his
has
game.
no weight.
Yeah, but I will give Cody Williams credit. He looked bigger when I saw him in Summer League. He actually played pretty well when you look at his numbers overall in Summer League, but a lot of my concerns with him just in terms of how he gets to his spots, not being an explosive athlete, the jump shot still looking inconsistent, we're all still there. And I didn't like him as much as I liked his brother going into the draft process, and Cody was taken higher because of riding kind of on what his high school profile was more than even what he did at Colorado. So anyways, we don't have to talk about Utah much because I'm with you. There's some interesting stuff to watch with Ace Bailey and Walter Clayton Jr., who are going to get a lot of minutes. The minivan takes a second run around Salt Lake City cul-de-sacs. Good for Georges Niang. Can't imagine how many times he's going to be losing his shit because he's really competitive and tends to get very testy when his team's not playing well. Going to be a lot of those nights for my guy. Kevin Love probably off this team before the trade deadline, if I had to guess, or at least bought out because hopefully they do him a solid and he gets another run at a decent competitive situation before it's all over.
Yeah, I'm just confused by the entire roster construction of this. They just really haven't hit on anything. I mean, Ace Bailey is their hottest new commodity, and hopefully, we find out what kind of coaching staff and what kind of developmental staff Utah has with his development. Obviously, going to a place that he wasn't exactly thrilled with ending up. That's never really ended well for a team that drafted a guy that was like, "Hey, I don't want to come to your team," and they're like, "Well, we're going to draft you anyway." That's never really worked out, but Ace Bailey, to his credit, has said all the right things since the draft and since the viral reaction to his getting drafted by Utah that happened at the draft itself. I have this team winning 19 games. You said a couple more. They were 17-65 last year. I have them going 19-63.
I'm going to give my pick, but I wanted to touch on something you said really quickly because I thought it was a very good point, which is I like this coaching staff. I like Will Hardy as an X's and O's coach. Yeah. The developmental side of it is now within sight of being worth questioning because we haven't really seen anything from their rookies. Filipowski notwithstanding, and we'll see, he did look good last year, but none of these other young guys have given me much to be excited about. I liked what I saw from Collier, but it was much of what I expected to see from Collier. That's not a knock on the Jazz's developmental stuff, but if he doesn't develop into being a shooter, then he's the player that he kind of projected as. And so I thought it was a really good thing to track, and Ace Bailey's going to be a good litmus test here. Everything they're doing is to get Darren Peterson, I think, or AJ Dybonsta, but I like Peterson, who's the maybe first round, the number one overall pick in this next draft, and fits exactly this roster.
Yeah. I always get concerned whenever you get one of these like young, supposedly brilliant savant kind of coaches. Yeah. My concern is, so the greatest coaches in the league, especially the ones that in the last few years have been the ones that no matter what roster you give them, they find a way to maximize that potential. So you see that with the Ty Lues and the Mark Dagnalds and the Steve Kerrs and, the coaches of that caliber. It's kind of unfair for Kerr.
I was getting ready to say, I was like, a couple of those guys were given very talented rosters, and this is not that situation.
Well, let's say Eric Spoelstra then, because he's been given a lot of different Miami Heat teams. Those guys don't have a specific style. They tend to maximize what roster they have. And my concern with Will Hardy, as good of an X's and O's guys that I think that he probably is, he seems to have a specific style of play that he's trying to get this team to have as an identity. And he's trying to fit a square peg in a round hole with a lot of the pieces that they've picked up or the players that they've supplied him with. So that's my concern.
I think that's fair. They've also wanted him to be bad, and I think his offensive
It's
system makes a
fair.
lot of sense when he has some of the parts that he should have. Like some of the guys that they've just foisted upon him aren't really players that you can win with no matter what your system is, considering the level of talent and circumstance versus that. What you're saying is not unfair. I do also believe that we just need to not we. I like what Utah's doing and just being patient with this situation and recognizing that they're leaving Will Hardy at a disadvantage.
Yeah.
All that said, I've got him at 22-60. I don't think they're going to blow the cover off anything. I just think they're going to win a few games earlier with Markkanen looking better and them kind of looking more comparable or looking more competent than they did to close last season where they were absolutely just horrible.
Yeah. Well, thank God they brought in Yusuf Nurkic, who's a great locker room guy, and everyone just really enjoys his company.
How is
So,
he their second most expensive contract? Which
second most expensive
good
contract.
on them on their books. It sucks because you can't sign anybody to Utah.
Yeah, and their third most expensive contract is slow-mo. Yeah. Kyle Anderson.
Shouldn't Michael Porter Jr. be on this team? Doesn't he make sense? In terms of the wild thought process that goes on with Michael Porter Jr. and also just bury this guy on a team that kind of wants to lose but could act like they're trying to win with a player that's going to make sure you're losing.
Let's if it got Michael Porter Jr. out of podcasting and out of being on live streams, I'll send him wherever the fuck you want. I just want to hear less from him.
I'm just going to say that he would be with some of his people in terms of a lot of his thought process if he were to move out of the New York area and into Utah.
I'm not touching it. I'm moving on. The projected fourth team in the loaded Northwest Division is I have the Portland Trailblazers.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Okay. Just wanted to make sure that we're on the same page. I know it can get we have some different thoughts sometimes. I'm a big fan of this team. I think you and I both are very high on them. We like what we saw down the stretch last year. We're both co-presidents of the Denny Advia fan club. There's a lot to like with this team. Toumani Camara, Donovan Clingan, Jeremy Grant, so amazing for the price. No, I think this is a really fun team, and I'm really excited about it. I'm excited to see Drew and Dame mentor these young guards, a real passing of the torch of guard play up there in Portland with Chauncey Billups as the head coach. There's some real guard development that should be like a point guard camp up there.
Both Drew and Damian making their returns to the organization, which is pretty funny considering that they were actually traded for each other through the organization, but now both are on the team. What makes me excited about this Trailblazers group is the defensive personnel and what you can kind of see. They struggled defensively and then had some flashes, but when you talk about the likes of Toumani Camara, who's an all defensive player, easily. And what I love about Toumani Camara, I brought up he led the NBA in charges drawn by 9 more charges than second player. And the thing that's noteworthy to me about that stat is not that he had that many charges. It's that when you look at that list, Toumani Camara is the only player on there that isn't weaponizing charges as a gimmick to compensate for how bad he is at other things defensively. It's just about how smart of a positional player he is, because all the rest of the guys in the top 10 are not all, typically are kind of the slower footed, smaller guys who are kind of taking dives and doing things to compensate. It's guys that are traffic cones. So that's how they make up for it. Toumani Camara is a beast. This guy, 2.1 stocks from the perimeter as a defender. He's all over the place. He's really doesn't have a weak point in his defensive game. The closest thing may be that he can get caught kind of cheating a little bit, but I love him. And then Donovan Clingan, if he can stay healthy, which is going to be a major concern for him his whole career to me, just because of his build and the way he runs and his size. But he's such a phenomenal rim protector and rebounder when he's in there.
Yeah, no, I'm a huge fan. Camara is the kind of player that I like, a guy that does all the dirty work, doesn't ask for a lot of recognition, likes to play physical and get up and down the floor. That's the kind of player that any coach would want on their team. I'm super like interested to kind of see the rotations of this Portland Trailblazers team. I don't really know, like, obviously Dame sitting out this entire season, and even though he's getting paid a ton of money to not be there, uh, he's getting his 14 million from Portland, and then he's getting all of his money from Milwaukee after the buyout. But I
Which
am
is
curious.
wild that he got that much of a number from Portland.
He's one of
Wow.
the highest. He's one of the highest earning players. I think they were literally making up for his like the money he lost in the buyout. They're like, hey, just 3 years, 42 million. What's that to us for having our ambassador to the game of basketball back?
And Lord knows this Trailblazers organization has not recently been known for overspending on injury-plagued veterans. Like, that's not a thing that they've done at all. So why not roll the dice on this?
Yeah, well, and now they've got a new ownership group that's coming in as well. So I mean, this is going to be very interesting to see. We all know what happens when new owners come in and they want to start to kind of put their fingerprints on the team and make it in their own image. Well, Dame's a holdover from the past. So what does that look like? Go ahead. You seem like you got.
Have you read up on this new owner at all, Tom Dundon?
I can't say I have. No.
Okay, so for those that don't, and look, I'm going based on Wikipedia, so I'm just going to admit that maybe this is false, but it's a little wild. So this guy, he's the owner of the Carolina Hurricanes, and so he bought the Blazers organization, but in his not so distant past, he helped buy in on a professional football team where he had guaranteed that he was going to inject the league with a sum of like $275 million, and then only paid $6 million, reneged, and then claimed it was a promotional claim to help trump up the profile of the league, and basically ended up sinking the league by doing this. Yeah, not great. Not great. I feel like that's kind of the type of impropriety that would not allow you to be cleared as owning a professional sports organization. But
he's not exactly Paul Allen, is what you're saying.
Yeah, this is going to be – I'm interested just to see. I know there's been scuttle about him trying to move the team to Carolina. Leaving Portland is like beyond me, but we've seen shady owners do shady things. But
the fact that North Carolina already has a team, we don't need one in Raleigh and Charlotte, so they can not support both of them.
Yeah, exactly.
There's just something about coming to North Carolina for professional sports. We're great at college sports, but don't come here for professional sports unless you're hockey.
I was going to say the Hurricanes have done pretty well for themselves.
Hurricanes have done well, absolutely.
Look, the Panthers would be okay if they could get competitive.
Let's not go there because I might have a rant and rave at the end of this. I adopted the Panthers when I moved to North Carolina, and it was one of the biggest mistakes I've ever made in my sports family.
I'm not going to lie. I thought your optimism going in was kind of cute, but I don't want to poke any holes into it.
I had him at 7-10.
I think Bryce Young is terrible. I thought he was terrible coming out of college as an NFL quarterback, but we digress. So let's back to the Blazers real quick. My biggest concern with this group is where are we on the developmental curve for them as a collective unit, because they have a lot of guys, right, that are really young that they're relying on. Scoot and Shaedon have to take that next step for this team to take that next step. Scoot was kind of all over the place last year. In general, he had a stretch that I really liked, and I wrote about it last year, and there's still people were so quick to just kind of throw him out in his second season as a 20-year-old. There's a lot for me to like there, and Shaedon Sharpe has the flashes of what they need, which is who is the primary scoring option for this group? It can't be Jeremy Grant. And that is going to be my biggest question. I love Deni Avdija. He's not a number one option. Deni Avdija's last 20 games should be shouted out, though, because that's what we do here, because we love Deni Avdija. He put up 23, 10, and 5 on 51, 42, 78 to close the season. Now,
and as much as I love those numbers, I do want to point out that it is to close the year, and I'm one of those people that's like, don't show me the last 20 games of the season because I don't believe it. If that was the case, then Josh Giddey would have got a max contract extension from the Chicago Bulls. Therefore, I'm just saying, I love Deni Avdija, not changing that. Just want to point that out.
I feel that way more when it's a team's performance than the individual performance, because in those 20 games, look, the last 10 games, you're not playing anybody. The last 5, you're really not. Those last 20 games, you are going to still fit in some teams that matter. And he had big performances basically on a nightly basis. Whereas like if a team goes 18-5 or whatever in the last 23, that I kind of throw out a little bit more. And I'm not trying to like You
No, and
know,
I think we should also point out that like this Blazers team finished 36 and 46. It wasn't inconceivable that they could have made a run to the 10th
yeah,
spot in the
3 weeks
playoffs.
out, they were sniffing the play-in,
It
and
was
that's,
right there.
yeah,
So they did have things to kind of play for. Maybe not those last, like you said, 5 to 10,
yeah.
but like the last 20, they were not giving up on the season. So it's important to point that out.
That's a great point. We'll close with I still have concerns with just kind of overall what Chauncey Billups is. I think he's the guy before the guy, but I'm happy that he got another season here. We're really going to see with this group, and I hope that everybody in Portland understands that the version of Drew Holiday you're getting now is like getting Gary Payton when he was on maybe not quite the Heat, but you're getting a guy who is a much
Lakers, Gary Payton.
yeah, probably Lakers Gary Payton. That's probably the good call. Like his per 36 points per game last year was the lowest of his career. In the playoffs, you could tell he had lost a little bit of a step. What you're getting is the guy to mentor your young guards, and that's the hope. And
Yes.
I think he's a perfect guy for that. That's not a knock. Just understand the value here is more on the player off the court than I think it is on the court in terms of wins and losses with his presence.
A couple of things before we make our projections. I think this is a real prove it year for Scoot, Shaden, and Chauncey Billups. I know he got the extension. They picked up the fifth year on his contract, and then they gave him 2 additional years. So he's got basically a 3-year contract. I think that the team would be with the new owner if they don't see the kind of improvements they want to see. We've seen this before where new owners just want to be like, he's not my guy. This extension happened before the team was officially sold.
Yeah.
So I do think that it's a make it or break it year for him, whether it's fair or not. But he does. You marked here in your notes that he does have an overall record of 117 and 211, which
Not
is
great.
not great. And you got a new owner that's probably here to put his stamp on things. And then like you said, Shaden and Scoot, I'm not like going to say that they're, if they don't perform to expectations this year, which I don't even know what a reasonable expectation would be for that backcourt, but I wouldn't say that I'm giving up on them, but it's not a great sign. So, and then to your other point about Drew Holiday, I think it's going to be one of those situations if they're smart that they do use him for player development. I think he starts like every other game kind of thing. There'll be games where they'll roll out the backcourt of Shaden and Scoot, and he'll come off the bench.
Starting, I think, is going to totally depend on what Scoot looks like early.
Yeah, and I will say that I do think that this last year, the schedule that Drew Holiday was on, going from the finals to the Olympics to the regular season, these nagging soft tissue injuries that kept bothering him. It was a knee thing. It was an eye thing. He had some real. He had a wrist injury. I think he had some real funky kind of. I mean, he's always been kind of an off
the hammer player. Thumb.
The hammer thumb. Oh my god, one of our best podcast episodes. But yeah, he had some weird injuries. I hope that this is like an Al Horford on the Thunder situation. Develop the young guys, be a good vet, and bide your time until maybe, because from the reports that I heard, he wasn't super happy with being dealt to the Trailblazers. I think he wants to be on a contender. He wants to play meaningful basketball. And I don't think he's quite ready to be the unk on a team where he's got to like coach and mentor and not still be a productive NBA player. So with all that being said.
Well, if that is true, then he is going to have the opportunity to do that because this is a Blazers team that can absolutely use production if he still has it.
Yes.
But my concern is he's going to be 35.
His contract's really rough.
He's played a lot of basketball, as we said, at a guard position that just never ages well, particularly in a style of play with his physicality, which can age well defensively. But last year, for all intents and purposes, the Celtics tried to give him the best slow roll you into the playoffs treatment. He played his lowest number of minutes per game that he had played since his rookie season. And his 62 games were one of his lowest seasons in terms of games played. And he still looked a step slow and a beat behind in that Knicks series in a way that was just disconcerting because I think all of us expected, all right, now this is when Drew turns it up. So the concern is maybe he doesn't have that ability anymore, and he might have to accept that. And we're going to see. I'm not burying the guy or saying that's the case. He just this may be that kind of when a star has to have that impasse in their career where they either do the Vince Carter and accept what the second act is, or if they kind of, and I think Drew, by all intents, Drew Holiday seems like the type of player that would accept that if that's his reality.
Well, that's why I think he'd be more willing to take on that 6-man role, because it's kind of how he got his career started. It's a great way to get it back on track if he still thinks he has more in the tank.
But the problem is if he doesn't think he's a 6-man on a bad team and he only was willing to sacrifice that because the Celtics were so good. And that's my concern with all of this.
Yeah. So I have the Blazers at 2 games of improvement, 38 and 44.
I've got this group going 40 and 42.
I respect that.
Yeah, I think they're going to sniff around. If they end up 41, 42, and 40, they're going to be good enough defensively that if they figure out what the offense looks like and they have enough guys, I think, to put together an offense. I'm just worried about what the team is in the last 2 minutes of fourth quarters of close games, because they have to learn how to play those games as a group that hasn't done it, and they just don't have that player right now that I trust to get me a bucket in those situations.
I just wonder, and we talked about, you and I have talked about this a lot in the last couple of months, about how frugal and kind of tight-walleted the league has become. If, the trade deadline comes around, and I know there's some pretty high price tags on some of these veteran players that are on Portland, but does any team come sniffing around Drew? Does any team come sniffing around Jeremy Grant if they can really get these guys to kind of rehabilitate their image and their contract? I know it's a lot of money to take on, but some contenders, they have the skill set and the body types and the veteran savvy, I guess, is what.
If Portland wasn't, no, I get it. If Portland was, the number for Drew and Jeremy Grant to me is too high right now.
It's really high.
Drew, and Drew's got 2 more years on this deal, so you really have to be committed.
And doesn't Jeremy Grant have 2 as well?
Yeah, so both of them have
60,
basically $65 and $64 million respectively still left as older players who aren't contributing at a level to justify that cost. So Drew would just Drew would have to look like a monster. My other thing is, if you're Portland and your plan is to trade Drew, I don't like. What are you expecting to get? Are you really? You're not going to get I don't think you're going to get a good haul because of the cost of that contract. So why trade Simons in the first place as an expiring contract unless it was a toxic situation?
I thought they were just making room for the other guys. It's just what it felt like to me. And now they're trying to get some veterans. But like I said, Drew hasn't fully seemingly accepted the role of being the old vet on
does trading for Drew make any more room than having Simons on the roster who's already coming off the bench?
I think it's an age difference, like you were talking about, Simons being 27 and Drew being 20 or 35. I think it's the difference between like a guy that's like still trying to make a name for himself and still trying to justify his contract versus a guy who knows exactly what kind of player he is and what he brings to an organization, especially ones that have championship aspirations. So I think you and I are still very close on these. I could have gone a little bit higher. I think I hedged and just kind of took the chicken shit route a little bit there, just added 2 wins to their last season total. I do think they're a better team. And I think with years of development, a little bit more camaraderie. And then, like you said, this veteran group on the bench that can kind of guide and help these guys out. I don't know. I could see 40 very easily. They could be sniffing the plan.
My hyperbolic claim, it's probably a 10-1. But Denny Advia makes the all-star team. If this team is really good, and they're really good early, which I don't know whether I do or don't expect, but like if Advia's putting up like 18, 9, and 5 with what he does defensively and how he charges things, look, it may be as a replacement. I don't know that he would get in on the vote, but I wouldn't be shocked if he made an all-star team as a sub-level player.
I could see it though. Like you said, those kind of numbers, especially the ones they put up the last 20 minutes or last 20 games of the year. It's just, man, the West is so deep.
This is why it's hyperbole. And again, I wouldn't
put I love it. I love it.
I wouldn't put it. If he was a guard, I wouldn't even bother saying it.
But with the new formatting, they have the international team and then the other 3 teams. What if he's one of the international guys?
There it is.
It's very possible. Yeah. Out of 30, if they're bringing 32 players, which I think it's 32 players, 8 players per team, right?
I thought they were somehow figuring out how not to change the overall number, but don't quote me on that.
Maybe it's 7-7 or something like
Yeah,
that, or,
yeah.
or yeah, seven
I
and
can't.
seven, eight and
Well,
eight. I don't know.
yeah, I can't. Yeah, because I guess to stay with 24, it'd have to be 6-6-6-6, but that would be weird. So you're not
That's a
doing
really
that.
hard team. I thought it was 8, but I might be
You
wrong
might.
about
You
that.
know.
So
You
don't quote me. But yeah, if they did expand it a little bit, then it kind of opens up the. I think it should be a little bit more expanded, especially if you're doing the round robin thing, because 32 All Stars versus 15 All NBA. It really says that there's a decided difference between a top 30 player and a top 15.
Well, they
We,
also.
we
We've
should
talked
have
about
that.
this. They haven't expanded the number of slots on the All-Star game to match up with expansion in the league. So
Yes.
it's you have more teams, but still the same number of All-Stars, and that kind of doesn't make sense because the reality is it makes it so much harder to make an All-Star team. Which sure, I love that from one standpoint. It's much more worthwhile. But like if I only had to compete with 8 other teams, and however many players were in that pool at that time, versus now there's 30 teams and the number of players in the pool at that time, it seems a little weird to have that have the same value when we look back and go, this guy made 10 All-Star games. Well, it was like, yeah, there was 56 players being selected in the league at the time. Like that wasn't that difficult,
There wasn't a lot of
comparatively.
guys there. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
then you'll probably have guys like Draymond going on their podcast and be like, the All Star doesn't mean shit anymore.
Yeah.
It was way harder back in my day when I made it.
Yeah, well, that's 100% true. But
Yeah,
and in fairness, part of the reason I don't know the number is like we're talking about the All-Star game. I just glaze over at this point. The NBA All-Star game is pointless.
they keep trying these different formats, but it's just not really pushing anyone's
they figure
attention.
something out. It's that weird thing where I'm like, it did feel important when I was younger, but it sucks now.
Oh, yeah, I'm completely with you. Okay, now it's going to get a little interesting because we got the last 3 teams. We got the Thunder, we got the Nuggets, and we got the Wolves. 3 teams that have some very high expectations for themselves. Who do you, Aaron Bullwinkle, have as the number 3 team in the Northwest Conference?
I've got the Timberwolves at number 3.
All right. I knew we were going to agree. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think unfortunately what this is going to play out as, although it may not for me, because if I remember your spicy take, but I have this division kind of just working out the same way it did last year. And that's not a knock on the division. I think this is actually a really good division. It's just the Timberwolves are the 3rd best roster. I think they're the 3rd best team in this group. And I expect them to actually take a leap forward just in terms of what their overall record looks like. Not significantly, but they figured themselves out in the second half of last season. 2 players in particular that were very vital to that. Dante DiVincenzo, who was a completely different player post All-Star break. Pre-All-Star game, he was only 37% from the 3. Post All-Star break, 45%. And his 3-point percentage just increased as the year went on. And then Julius Randle missing that time. And really, you could tell that he figured something out about how he needs to fit in with this team and also how this team can play without him because they were as good as they were during that stretch that he was hurt. He came back and looked like a different player. If that sticks and that the way that they flowed into that postseason where they ended up having that, dismantling basically the Lakers, this Timberwolves team will be one of the 5 best teams in the West, one of the 4 best teams in the West.
No, I completely agree. You and I had talked about it before the season started. We had talked about like the fit with Julius Randle and with his team, and then you and I had said the same thing pretty much. We said if I trust anybody to figure this out, I trust Chris Finch, and to figure out how to make these teams play together. And it didn't look great the first 15 or 20 games, and then Randle gets injured. He goes out for a while. Anthony Edwards is shooting more threes than ever because the paint is completely clogged. But when he came back, they really did. They just figured out how to use him. Randle played some of his most inspired basketball since that first year with the Knicks where he made 3rd team All NBA. He was really good, and he's earned the benefit of the doubt as far as what kind of player he is because people tended to have they had this idea of who he was as a player. He's like, well, Julius Randle is a ball hog. He's selfish. He's a ball stopper. He is only concerned about his own buckets. And we saw he became a much more willing passer last season in the Chris Finch system.
I want to say a couple things just while we're on Randle. One, I think the conversation of his passing wasn't necessarily so much a ball hog as he sat on the ball too long. So he
Well,
because
maybe I said ball hog when I meant ball stopper. That's kind of
no, and
what,
I was
yeah.
yeah, and I just I'm trying. I'm gonna. This is not even a correcting you thing. It's a me wanting to kind of calibrate some of the stuff around Julius Randle, which I've even been guilty of. Because one of the problems that I've had with him was my concern was he was going to hijack the style of offense too much, and the first half of the season he did. But one of the things that he's not given enough credit for over the course of entire career has been his malleability. The Julius Randle with the Lakers and the Pelicans was a pure pivot player that just relied on strength and his quickness and rebounded and played an interior brand of basketball. The player with the Knicks developed a perimeter game, was much more face-up oriented, did a lot off the dribble and liked to get into his stuff shooting. The player with the Timberwolves figured out how to get off the ball quickly, get into his spots, and then go to work. Because there was still times, particularly in the Lakers series, you'd see him start to do his thing, but he wasn't doing that as the first option. He was doing that once it was kind of situationally appropriate in the shot clock and where the Timberwolves were kind of in the set and when they needed things. And that difference was so important. And he deserves credit for all of that.
And one more thing that he hasn't gotten a lot of credit for because it hasn't been like the thing that he's ever been known for. His defense in that Lakers series was really good.
Yeah.
He played LeBron really well. He guarded Rui Hachimura. He was willing to put himself on like bigger opponents and take that kind of physical challenge on. He gave LeBron, he made him work in that series. And they beat him pretty handily as a team, but
He
Julius
won that
Randle
matchup.
He did. He looked really good. And a lot of people were saying that, like, before that series started, their big concern was who does Julius Randle guard? Does he guard LeBron? And how does he work in that matchup? And he proved himself over a 5-game series as a very, like, at least a defensive player that puts the effort forward and knows how to use his physicality. I really respected that about Julius Randle, and I'm glad that he made his way back to the Timberwolves. I think it's a nice landing spot for him. He's a perfect number 2 right next to Minnesota. I mean, maybe not the perfect fit, but he's a great number 2 player, and he's great next to Anthony Edwards because they figured out how to play together. I was just looking over Minnesota's contracts, and they owe. This is just like the AAV on these contracts. I mean, they've got 48 million going to Anthony Edwards, 36 going to Rudy Gobert, 33 to Randall, 26 to Jaden McDaniels, 25 now to Naz Reid, and 11 to DiVincenzo, and 10 to Mike Conley. And then the next player after that's on his rookie scale contract, it's Rob Dillingham.
Well, their hope obviously has to be that this is the last ride of Mike Conley and that Dillingham steps into a role to be able to take over that slot, because not only is Conley's age part of a problem, even though he really did resurrect himself come playoff time and looked
great shooter.
Yeah, and he looked completely comfortable and healthy and all those things. But they, just from a contract standpoint, some of these younger guys are going to have to hit for them to avoid some of the salary cap issues they're going to have with hitting. They're already in the second apron, or excuse me, they're already over the first apron on this season. And so they're just going to start running into a lot of problems. And we knew this with the way the contracts worked and with their lack of being able to move people. They had to re-sign Naz Reid because of what he gives them and their versatility. The big thing for them is Terrence Shannon Jr., Jalen Clark, Yoan Berenjay kind of later on, probably right now. But what do these players give them as this season goes along as complementary players for them? Because they're going to come next summer, they're going to have some stuff they really have to start to figure out.
Hey, I mean, I know we're going to talk about the Thunder a little bit later, but Terrence Shannon Jr.'s defense against Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, immediately he's one of the top 3 defenders in guarding SGA.
Yeah.
It's like him, Herb Jones, and I'm trying to think of, there's one other player that really gives him fits, but I can't remember his name off the top of my head now.
Andrew Nembhard?
Nembhard's pretty damn good at it. Yeah,
I mean, look, the numbers will tell a different story if you didn't watch the game, but Nembhard did a hell of a job.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, but I'm saying, like, Terrence Shannon Jr. is just one of those guys that just like is an amazing defender. Actually, Amin Thompson also did a great job on SGA, but that's that guy can guard anybody.
He's
I think you could stick him. You could stick him on anybody. He's one of the greatest defensive players in the league.
he's going to finish in the top 5 in defensive player of the year this year. Terrence Shannon
That's not
Jr.
even spicy.
No, not yeah. I wasn't even trying to get anything off there.
No, I was saying it's just awesome.
Terrence Shannon Jr. This will be a little bit spicier, but I don't think it'll be crazy. We'll be in the top 10 in bench scoring this season.
Love that. Yeah.
I think he's a professional.
That's probably medium
scorer.
Spicy. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
and
that
he's
guy,
a great defender. And Chris Finch loves him and trusts him already.
Yeah. Well, it helps that he's like 35. I mean, he's older than Anthony Edwards, and he was a rookie last year.
This is true. I mean, but yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, you need guys like that on your roster who's going to do the dirty work and be grateful for the opportunity in which they get to do so.
Well, and you want to talk about a guy that's going to do that. That's Jalen Clark, who I hope he figures out his jump shot, because watching that guy defend, he's kind of a Lugan Dort type of defender where he's very strong, very physical. He's bigger than Dort is overall, though Dort makes up for that just because he's always in front of everybody. But like, Jalen Clark has the potential to be an elite defensive player. Now, I don't know if his offense is going to be too much of a liability to keep him on the floor, which was the case come playoff time. But I'm excited to see what they have in him as well, because he looked really good in the second half of last season for them.
Yeah, I mean, the Timberwolves last year, they were 6th in the West. They were 49-33. They were top 10 in offense and defensive rating. They were, like I said, slow start, kind of a little bit of a scuttle to get the season started. But once they figured it out, they were one of the best teams in the Western Conference. And I know that series wasn't particularly close with the Oklahoma City Thunder, but they put themselves in position to challenge for the opportunity to represent the West. Every year that Anthony Edwards has been there, except for his rookie year, they've made the playoffs. Go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to step on your thought. I apologize. Keep going.
No, you're fine. It's quite the turnaround to see. Again, we do have a new owner with this team as well, with the Alex Rodriguez taking over, the Alex Rodriguez group taking over for Glenn Taylor after that weird arbitration and that weird sale of the team, but it ended up finally happening. I will be curious to see what they do, but everything that they did this offseason was, let's re-sign these guys and make another run at it. We believe in this group, which is really hardly ever the case with new owners, but we'll see if they get a little antsy around the trade deadline. I like this team a lot, and I like that they paid for the players that have gotten them to this point. And I mean, other than Gobert, I don't think maybe Jaden McDaniels hasn't quite lived up to the contract.
Yeah, but the Jaden McDaniels that we saw in the second half of last season, again, there's a lot of guys who are saying this because they found a good rhythm, but offensively, he was finally, because defensively, really, if we're going to look at Jaden McDaniels' contract, right, like, it's a very expensive contract, but the level of defender he is on the perimeter is probably 70% of the value of that deal, if we're being honest.
Yeah. And I think they had, the year they gave him that contract, he had a nice, like, on low attempts, but he had a nice 3-point percentage. So they were like, oh, he's 6'10", he plays this kind of defense, and he can shoot. Yeah. Now, we haven't really seen the full caliber of offense yet, but the potential's there. And if he grows into that contract, he'll be a steal at $26 million.
That second half run, that offense started to look like it. Look, if he only needs to average somewhere around 16 to 18 points per game to really be the value for that deal, because he doesn't have to be the driving force for anything offensively. He just has to be a threat that makes him their third best option, fourth best option on the floor at any given time.
It felt to me when the playoffs last year, he was their X factor. Whenever he was playing well, they were destroying everybody. Yeah. Whenever he had an off game offensively and he only had like 8 points off 3 of 11 shooting, then, the offense kind of fell apart. He was a real swing guy as far as how Minnesota played last year. So I expect that to continue. We said they were 49-33. I've got Minnesota winning 52 games.
I've got them at 51-31. As we tap out on them, I do want to say, Anthony Edwards, please, let's have your 3-point attempt rate be somewhere closer to 40%. 50.3% for the level of player he is as an offensive attacker and just downhill killer. and the way that he throws defenses into chaos when he's getting to the rim. I don't want to see him taking that many threes again.
Yeah, it is funny that we went this entire Minnesota preview and didn't talk about Anthony Edwards at all. But what is there to say other than he's like one of the rising stars of the league? And the only thing, like you said, I would like to see him, he either dunks or shoots a three. What I would like to see is just to be that three level scorer and just add a midi.
He has it too.
He's got it. He doesn't use it.
He needs to use it. It's crazy. This summer, I was talking to a guest at my bar, and they were talking about how they thought Anthony Edwards was overrated, and at this point of career, he should already be doing more. And I just kind of stopped engaging in the conversation because at that point, I just knew this person wasn't going to be worth trying to have a substantive argument where I was going to change his opinions with facts and relevant statistics. But this guy won he finished top 7 in MVP the last 2 years. He was 7th both times. He went to the Western Conference Finals the last 2 years. He just finished his 5th season. What are anybody who thinks that Anthony Edwards is behind schedule? I don't care how you felt about the 3-point shooting and all the rest of it. That's foolish.
This might say more about the Minnesota organization than it does about Anthony Edwards, but he's already their franchise leader in playoff wins.
He's the second best player in franchise history.
Yeah, behind KG. Exactly.
Already. Look, like right now, if his career just ended right now, Anthony Edwards would be the second player in the history.
He'd get his jersey retired in the rafters in Minnesota after 5 seasons. That's how much he's done.
Here's the better question. Who's even in that argument? Are we talking about like Al Jefferson or Latrell Sprewell? Like that to
Sam Cassell?
Yeah, Wally Zerbiak? Like who is
dude, that's a nice little throwback. I like that. Yeah, I mean that's a really good point. Maybe Kevin Love.
Yeah, Kevin Love. Yeah,
Kevin Love is in there. I mean, but he really only played his first couple of seasons.
Kevin Love for the sake of Zach LaVine, but the point Andrew Wiggins.
I was going to bring up Wiggs.
Our point is just that it has not been an illustrious run for this organization. So to think a guy who just took them to back-to-back conference finals for the first time in the history of the franchise is somehow underperforming is objectively dumb. I'm sorry. It's objectively dumb.
I could not agree more. So we got to move on. I have. God damn it! That was my guess, wasn't it? That's so silly. So we have to talk about the Denver Nuggets. Is that who you have on your list?
Yeah.
Okay,
it's got to be Nuggets here. Yeah,
it's got to be the Nuggets here. I know that my hyperbolic take was that 60-22 Houston Rockets are the ones that would be the best record in the West next year. I mean, that's a hyperbolic take. I don't think I have that.
Yeah.
But like officially, but that's like my spicy take. But with Denver, they've gotten rid of the blabbermouth that is Michael Porter Jr.
Hey, man, we need to talk about really quickly. This dude has been on an elite run of efficient stupidity.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable that this guy... he has found every microphone to talk into and then say the worst shit you could possibly imagine. And
can you imagine what the interviews were like with this guy? And I had heard that Michael Porter Jr. was not a budding Rhodes Scholar. We were not going to find out that there was some latent genius in this man, but whoo! You would think, considering all the stuff that his family's been through, maybe he would just kind of take a back seat and chill. But he's like, nah, let me cook.
Generational stupidity, a generational run. Congratulations to him. Have fun in Brooklyn. And good luck finding out what it's like not to play with the greatest player on the planet. So the Denver Nuggets, 50-32 last year. They were third in the West. They were tied with the Clippers and the Lakers, but through tiebreakers and on and on. They ended up being the number 3. They were second in their division. They were 21st in defensive rating, and I believe they were top 2 or top 3 in offensive rating.
I messed that up. I believe they were third in offensive rating.
That sounds about right. Yeah, they're 118.9. It's a damn good offensive rating, but the defensive rating stuff did improve over the second half of last season after the firing of Mike Malone and relieving their general manager of his duties as well. And this offseason, they have gone out and addressed every need that this team had for being one of the most cash-strapped teams in the NBA. They were, being over the apron. What kind of moves were they able to make? They're able to bring in Tim Hardaway Jr. They brought back Bruce Brown, who was essential on their championship run just 3 seasons ago. They added Cam Johnson while getting rid of Michael Porter Jr., who, in my personal opinion, I think Cam Johnson is a better overall player than Michael Porter Jr. I could hear arguments to the contrary, but I
I
think whenever
agree. Really quickly, it's wild to think that Michael Porter Jr. has been the healthier player.
that is weird to think
Yeah,
because he's
because
been
Cam
injured a
Johnson
lot.
has had nagging issues. This last year was kind of his healthiest season, and it's been back related, which is also funny. They traded one guy whose back was the reason he dropped as low as he did in the draft to another guy in Cam Johnson, whose back issues have been one of the problems he's had over the course of his career as a professional.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And then finally, they were able to address their backup center position by getting rid of DeAndre Jordan and bringing in Jonas Valanciunas. And
Who I'm so
reluctantly,
glad he decided to stay in the NBA after that trade.
he wanted to go to Greece or go to Serbia. I can't remember where the hell he was trying to go, but he
I want to say he wanted to go to Greece, and shout out the Greek team for winning third at Eurobasket. And Giannis saying that was the biggest accomplishment of his basketball career, which I respect the hell out of that. Adam Silver somewhere had to be so pissed. Like just hearing that, like you wanted NBA championship, a Finals MVP, an NBA MVP, a Defensive Player of the Year, and you're out here saying that this. And look, it shows a lot of country and civic pride and all that. But that's
I was just about to say that because I was going to say, like, bring up the Olympics. And if, say, Giannis brings a bronze to Greece in the Olympics, not just Eurobasket, but the Olympics overall, like, I have to imagine that that would be an even bigger accomplishment than the Eurobasket bronze and the NBA championship because, for being an immigrant and a refugee and growing up in Greece the way that he did, he loves that country.
And also when we talk about just the comparative talent, right? I can't name another Greek player. Papagiannis is the last Greek player I can think of who was in the NBA. And his name's on the tip of my brain just because we talked about him when we were talking about the Kings in the Pacific Division. That it's Giannis and everybody else. I mean, I always hate when people use the terms the others or the other guys. In this case, it's appropriate.
Yeah, it's it's Giannis and the Supremes, Giannis and the Pips.
Yeah, it's a lot of other guys that I imagine have a bunch of vowels as well in their name.
It's very hard for me to remember all their names because I cannot pronounce any of them. I already have enough hard time pronouncing the guys that are in the NBA, much less guys who play international ball. But the Denver Nuggets, after relieving, like we said, Mike Malone of his coaching responsibilities,
and David Adelman doing a great job.
Adelman really took the Thunder to the limit, and it was them and Rick Carlisle and the Pacers that were the only real deterrence to the Oklahoma City championship run. So shout out to him for coming in an almost impossible situation and doing an outstanding job. He's got a great coaching pedigree. His father, obviously, one of the most respected coaches in NBA coaching circles. A lot of people really loved Rick Adelman, and so his son. Congratulations to him on his new gig. Plus, he inherits one of the best starting fives in basketball.
Man, the Thunder may be the Thunder and maybe the Rockets, but I think I actually like this starting five better than the Rockets.
I like the continuity of the starting five as well,
and the complementary nature of them as well, because
you have all understand their roles.
You have the one guy in Christian Brown who's not gonna he's the one guy that you don't have to worry about really feeding in any way, shape, or form to impact stuff. You have Aaron Gordon as an all-star level player who just does all the things. And then it's weird. You look Jamal Murray, it felt like he had a down season last year, and then you look at his numbers and it was like, this is the same 22. It's
very on par with what he's done before.
6 and 45, 38, and the guy has to make an all-star game just for the sake of his professional profile. It's driving me crazy at this point because he has been such a good player when he's healthy.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. So, I mean, I love the additions to this team. I think they're going to shore up a lot of that defensive stuff. I don't think they're going to be like a world beater on defense, but I think that this team it has a defensive identity that they can kind of rely on. I think they're so good offensively. They just need to be better than average defensively to really, make a run at this. I think like I said, I can't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head, but the last half of the season, they were I think they want to say they were a top 15 defensive rating team. That 21st rating, it started off with a real ugly start to the
Yeah.
season. And then post All-Star break, they cleaned it up and they played a hell of a lot better, especially considering the kind of defense they played on Oklahoma City in that 7-game series that they had in the second round of the playoffs. So, for as much as maligned as that defense has been, I think that this is a team that they have good athletes. They have good coaching, and I think they have an identity that they can, reasonably rely on. That's what I'm going to stick with.
So the bench is going to be the concern here because obviously their bench was much talked about last year and the over-reliance on Russell Westbrook and obviously the amount of chaos he can throw into late games as a player you have to lean on. But their bench was 27th in scoring last year. It by all standards, it should be better when you have Bruce Brown, Tim Hardaway Jr., and Jonas as guys that you can kind of rely on with that bench. We'll see what they can get out of Day'Ron Holmes. I'm not as big on him as some other people have been, and I didn't necessarily love what I saw in Summer League. I want to really quickly, just before we tap out on the Nuggets, because we have to honor this, just talk about what Nikola Jokic has done over the last 5 seasons. And before I get into these stats, I had a conversation with my dad yesterday who had listened to one of my pods and said, it was good, but sometimes you try to use stats to confirm your point a little too often. And to that I say, have you paid attention to my brand at all? So I'm going to spit these stats because they're incredible and I feel like they need to be said. So Nikola Jokic over the last 5 years has averaged 27, 12, and 9 with 1.4 steals per game on 59, 38, 82. That's 5 seasons straight of what would be considered, just as a singular year, one of the best offensive seasons ever. And this guy just does this ho-hum. He's never played less than 70 games. There is not enough celebration, superlatives, acknowledgement, bug-eyed amazement that can be had in terms of what Jokic is doing right now. And the fact that, it's kind of like what happens to Shohei. It happened to Trout. These guys who normalize obscene numbers then start to allow for people to take them for granted. And we can't and we shouldn't.
No, I completely agree. I think, I have conversations with older basketball fans, and they're unwilling to recognize his contributions to the game and his place in its history because his style of play is not typical of what they expect. They see these amazing athletic guys, and then they see someone who's a little bit more plodding, flat-footed, low to the ground, and he uses head fakes and his eyes to kind of move defenders. He's like a veteran quarterback in the NFL. That the way that he uses like his experience, he uses the fact that he is bigger and stronger. It's almost Roethlisberger-esque, if that's like one of the more underrated quarterbacks that we've ever had. But like with Tom Brady's kind of pedigree as far as like everyone reveres this guy who's played against him. But people who just watch him do not see Tom Brady. They see Ben Roethlisberger. They see Tony Romo because he doesn't have the profile that they want.
Part of what bothers me though, in terms of any argument with the older generation, is like, how could you watch and appreciate Larry Bird and not understand and appreciate Jokic because they do a lot of the same things on the floor, if that's what you want to talk about, a player that's not super athletic, but knows how to weaponize footwork, speed, misdirection, spacing. Like Pop brought it up, and I agree with it, but Jokic he is incomparable. But the closest player you can get to is probably Larry Bird because of all the things he can do as a shooter, a passer, a rebounder, a player who defensively gets maligned because he doesn't do flashy stuff, but really understands positioning and has his hands in things all the time. Like, Jokic is not a plus defender, but he's never as bad of a defender as he's made out to be. It drives me crazy.
Yeah, because he's not a shot blocker. And they're like, well, he's 7 feet tall. And it's like, yeah, he can't jump. But you know what he can do? He puts his body in between the defender, between the offensive player and the basket, and he just makes it harder on them. And when you're that size, 260, 270 pounds, whatever he may be, it's enough.
And he's no longer skinny Jokic. There is no skinny Jokic anymore. He's gone back.
He's got great hands. And, that speaks to the 1.4 steals that you were talking about, because SGA, who was one of the steal leaders last year, him and Jokic had the same number of steals per game.
Yeah.
So, people don't give, they were like, wow, trying to give SGA credit for being this great defensive, two-way player, which is one of the cases they're making for MVP. You look at some of those numbers. I mean, SGA did average more blocks than he did, but like I said, the steals were there, and the defensive metrics made them pretty comparable players. So that's why that argument didn't really hold a lot of water for me, especially in the MVP discussion. But yeah, I think he gets maligned too much for the things that he's not good at, and not celebrated nearly enough for the things that he's amazing at, which is most things on a basketball court.
And what's been really amazing to watch in his career arc in the development of him as a player is, okay, so my team needs this from me, so I'm going to do this. He didn't want to be a three-point shooter for so long. He was so reluctant. Everybody was frustrated with him not being willing to shoot threes 5 years ago. And he finally was like, okay, I've got to do this. And then, okay, I'm just going to do this at a level that's elite, right? And it's been, scoring was the same way. We knew back in 2018 that if Nikola Jokic wanted to be, he could be an elite scorer, but nobody thought he didn't want to be. And then all of a sudden that year in 2019, he's like, all right, or 2020, he's like, fine, I'm going to ratchet this up to 25 again. It's just, there is, we already did this with Asia, and I actually drew the parallels to them last year in a piece because of the position they play, the way they're rewriting statistics, the MVPs and everything else. But this is another example of you're watching a player operate at a level that we just don't see. And the way he adapts his game, the way he adjusts in game, how he approaches the game, but also game to game, matchup to matchup, season to season. These are just elite levels of processing and game understanding that extend so far beyond his prodigious physical gifts that make him elite beyond any of the stuff that we can actually quantify.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I think honestly, he might be underrated in the way that we talk about him.
He's 100% underrated. It's just, even when we see some, I'm starting to build out my all-time list. I've been kind of playing around with it and I'm slow rolling it, but I have him number 16 already. I don't know
on your all-time list.
Yeah, because even when you start to compare him against the other guys in those spaces, if we do it by titles or MVP or statistical accolades, he's already got all of those things, and he's about to turn 30. So he's got more MVPs than more MVPs than everybody but 4 players. I'm not going to really try to do the math.
Michael LeBron
and Russell and Kareem. Those are the 4 players that have more MVPs than him. He's tied with Moses Malone with 3. Okay, so he's already got a Finals MVP. He already has a title. So those other distinguishing factors, when you start to he's already got all of that, and he's this young. That's why it's to me, it's just so difficult to not already just be in awe of what this guy is doing. And we're in it in real time. And that's sometimes I think we lose the forest for the trees sort of situation with him as well, where when people are poking some of those holes, I know we want to do that because we always are looking for kind of the ways to let a little air out of this balloon. But in this situation, let this thing sail and fly away. He's phenomenal. We should all just enjoy it, because I talked to somebody that's kind of tangentially involved in the organization who told me everything you hear about this dude just possibly packing it up and leaving is completely true.
Yeah, it's the organization worries
it's
about
not
that
just
a lot.
rumor. That this is a guy that was around the organization at times in the last couple of years and said, yeah, that's absolutely true. This guy.
I do have a question for you. If you're talking about an era of a player's his run of his career, Giannis has a very similar uh, profile resume.
Yeah.
Do you have him close to Jokic
Oh
then?
yeah, yeah, they're right next to it. Like
Okay.
I have Jokic ahead of Giannis because I
Yeah,
think
I
the
do too.
ability to make other players better and that extra MVP and the fact to me, really, the two other MVP, he's finished top 2 in the MVPs now for 5 straight years, and you can make an argument he should have won it over Embiid. I did at the time because
Yeah.
that was his best year and it's the year they won the title, right? I have
I yeah, I thought that was a pity thing for because they had done that whole thing the season before about like how Embiid deserved it too,
it
and
was
they
the
weren't giving
narrative
him
award.
the narrative award.
Yeah, it was
Absolutely.
the
I
narrative
mean,
award.
but
It's the
yeah, I
same
mean,
thing.
you can look at Giannis put up 32, 12, and 5, and then you look at Jokic putting up 27, 12, and 9, and you're like, and they both have a title. They both have
Yeah.
a finals MVP. They both have multiple MVPs. I
And
have
Giannis
them
has a
like
defensive player of the year where
and
Jokic
the
doesn't.
defensive player of the year stuff
And
is right
Giannis
there
also
too.
has a most improved player, which doesn't necessarily have to mean as much because once you get to that level, but it just shows, the
Yeah.
other
So I
accolades
have
for him.
them. I think you said you have Jokic 16. You could
Something
have
like that. Yeah.
Giannis
I have them
17, 18.
I have them both top 20, and they're in the
Yeah.
grouping. We don't have to get in the weeds of this, but they're in the
No,
grouping
no,
right
it's
now with
fine.
like Dirk, KG, Giannis, and Jokic are kind of all in the same kind of space for me
Love
right now.
that. All right. It's record time. I've got Denver at 53 and 29, a
I have the
3-win improvement.
I have the exact same record.
Love it. Look at us go.
We're not really that first team, the Jazz, were about the only one that we've had more than one game of distinction, I believe.
Yeah, I'm about to say I think Portland we had 2, but like
Okay.
you could have convinced me. I think I hedged a little bit, but I think I had them in the same range that you did. So
Yeah.
I
I
said
wouldn't be
38 because I was being a little bit of a coward.
Yeah. This Denver team could end up winning as many as like 58 to me if they decide that they want to go for it. I just don't think they will.
Yeah.
Aaron Gordon was kind of nagging down the stretch, and he's so important. I think they'll play it just safe enough to be really good, but not go full throttle because they know who they are. The playoffs are the only thing that matters for them.
Yeah, I love it. So now we must talk about the champs, the defending and reigning champions, the Oklahoma City Thunder. They basically locked up their core this offseason after winning their title, an amazing run. But now Oklahoma City finds themselves with the biggest target on their back. They finished 68 and 14 last year, number 1 in the West, number 1 in the NBA. Third in offensive rating and number 1 with a bullet, the defensive rating, with the greatest net rating regular season of all time. This was a truly historic team, and they've added some interesting rookies, though one of them will not be seeing the floor. Unfortunately, Thomas Sorber tore his ACL. Is that correct?
ACL. And what's
Yeah.
really sad about this is going into the draft process, as I was watching Thomas Sorber, he was coming off of a leg injury that limited him at Georgetown, and you see the player's style and the size, and I was very concerned about injury potential with him. And now we've got a guy that's got 2 leg injuries as a heavier ground-bound style of player. And he has the type of skill set to his game that it's not going to be predicated upon him having to be a great athlete, but he also can't afford to lose a lot of athleticism due to injuries because of his style of game. So being hurt with the Thunder, look, this is now three out of 4 years that a first round pick for them has been hurt basically going into their rookie season. So there are a few developmental situations that are better. You can look at Nikola Topic, who tore his ACL right before the draft and go, hey, how was this? And he can look at Chet and say, hey, how was this for you? And hopefully
he's got plenty of people to ask about like how the Thunder's medical team is going to treat them very well. And you'll have plenty of time to develop yourself. Though it is important to bring up that Thomas Sorber, in all actuality, was brought in as an Isaiah Hartenstein replacement. So this lack of development for him over a year is going to be a little detrimental to what the Thunder do. But
because the Thunder don't want to pick up that team option. Like that,
yes.
that's their plan is to not do that, and that hurts their depth if they don't. Look, they'll figure it out, right? Like maybe next year we are looking at a little bit more Kendrick Williams and Jalen Williams, and they just have to kind of ride out with that and see what it is. But you're right.
Yeah, when you shell out,
$1
700
billion for
a,
three players,
a
basically.
billion dollars, yeah. It's $780 million in extensions plus what they're already being owed for the next season.
Yeah.
When you shell that kind of money out, you you got to start cutting corners somewhere. You got to start paying some people a little less.
I want to say something though, because we can't glaze, as the kids say, Sam Presti enough. But the genius behind getting those deals done when he did and doing it early as a show of confidence in these players is such a smart move, because that disease of more always kind of seeps in. And year one from year two, some players who feel like their profile wasn't acknowledged enough. And I don't expect this with these Thunder guys, but everybody is susceptible to kind of the pernicious effects of ego at a young age, no matter what. And so you show these guys the good faith of that type of contract early. Like, look, we think you're superstars too. Don't worry about how much you're being used or what the media is saying. We already bought into that. So you just already kind of turn off the valve of any of that even before it can get going. I love that. It's brilliant. Separate of the fact that both of those guys are multiple time All-Stars, waiting.
Also, I think it's super important to point out that SGA actually saved Oklahoma City a lot of money by signing the extension when he did, because he could have played out this last year on his $38 million that he's owed, and he would have been due a 5-year, $380 million max extension, but he took the 285, saved the Thunder $95 million that they could use to pay the other guys and extend them as well. So the timing was important.
Did he incorporate anything in the last couple of months? Because if there's an SGA LLC, I'm concerned.
I will say, I think he's got a job at a couple of car dealerships around town, but you will never see him behind his desk. No, SGA did. He really did the Thunder a solid on that one. I think he's just one of those guys that he's very happy with his situation, and he cares more about winning than personally his own personal wealth. I think he's got more than enough for a guy who doesn't.
I was like, that's an easy line to toe when the side of wealth that you're falling on is $260 million. But
well, and I will also say he did fire his agent, because who needs an agent when all you have to do is walk into the door and say, I need that max contract. And Sam was like, oh yeah, I got it right here. It's
sorry, homie, that 12% ain't going to you.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I got this. I got my money. SGA famously doesn't drink. He doesn't go out to clubs. He doesn't party. The only vice he has is fashion. He loves designing his own clothes. He has his own clothing line. So, he's got no outside distractions. He's a husband, a father, and a fashion designer and a basketball player. He doesn't go out and party. He's just not a drinker.
Basically, what you're saying is he's like the positive Russell Westbrook off the court.
Russell Westbrook's a very positive guy.
I don't even mean Russ was negative. I just mean like all like the glowing sides of like all those personality traits. And that was not meant as a shade on Russ at all for Russ fans out there. I wouldn't say that. I just mean like the fashion, the health conscious, all those things. Like it's funny how he's got a lot of parallels to a former superstar in OKC.
Yeah. And, I'm not trying to take a shot at Anthony Edwards here, but there's all this conversation about the face of the league. And SGA's never brought up in that conversation. I think one reason is that he's not American. And the other reason is that he's not as flashy as Anthony Edwards. He doesn't talk shit. He's competitive, but he doesn't
demand attention. And the problem for the league is that in almost all cases, the guy who's the top star usually demands attention.
Yeah. And that's SGA's not as I say personable, but I guess I should say marketable.
Yeah.
The way that Anthony Edwards will have these really cool commercials. He's got the great sneaker deal with Adidas. He's very outspoken. He's been in movies. You haven't really seen that from SGA yet. He's done some commercials for AT&T, and he's got a shoe line, but it's with Converse. He wanted that kind of creative control so he could design his own shoes.
Cool does not sell as well as bombastic. And that's just in this world at large, but especially in sports. And SGA has that kind of unflappable cool that I absolutely love, but that's far less marketable than the guy who's dunking and yelling and referring to his penis size on the sidelines.
Yeah, I mean, bring gas has never
Yeah.
come out of SGA's mouth as far as I can tell. But that was very, you know what? That was like it was a really quotable thing that Anthony Edwards said, and it makes Minnesota like a really fun team to watch because you never know what Ant's going to say. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, back to the team. Basically, what they did this year was just bring everybody back. Essentially,
Except
their
for they get
top.
a little richer because of AJ Mitchell and Nikola Topic.
Yes, exactly. So they gave an extension to AJ Mitchell. I think it was 3 years, 8 million with a team option on the last year. They get Topic, who was their lottery pick, who was as we mentioned earlier, had the ACL tear. But they've already re-signed Aaron Wiggins. They've already re-signed Isaiah Joe. They've extended Alex Caruso last season. So basically, their top 10 to 12 hasn't changed at all. This is pretty much the exact same team, but with some very key additions to the bench. Uh, I'm actually a huge fan of what's his name, Barnheiser.
Yeah, Brooks Barnheiser, who he's going to be that stereotype. He's like this year's Dylan Jones. Like he's going
Yeah,
to be the guy that might feature when they kind of go 14 or 15 deep. One thing that I mean, this has been talked about before, but not only were those re-signings that you talked about that happened last season really beneficial, but you look at this Thunder roster, everybody is tradable. Like they don't have a bad deal, and they've got a lot of guys that anybody in the league would be excited to add onto their roster, going all the way down to Ousmane Dieng, who I still haven't given up on.
I'm
He's
the
not even getting enough
Jang
playing time to matter. Like that's the
the
problem
Jang
at this point.
gang. The Jang gang is alive and
We're
well,
still in
and
the we're still in the
I'm
thing.
still there.
Yeah.
I'm waiting to make jackets.
Yeah.
I'm still in. He's got the right size. He just hasn't quite found his footing. But I think I actually had you want to talk about a spicy take last year when we were talking about the Thunder on a different podcast. I think I said that by the end of the year, Jang would have been the starting four for that Thunder team. So it would have been SGA, Dort, Jalen Williams, Jang, and Chet. Turns out I was not right about that. So
No,
that was
I don't even know if he's third on the depth chart at any of those positions.
and the forward. No, I really thought he was going to make a leap last year. I thought they were going to find the space for him, but they did not.
AJ
So
Mitchell, going back to him because he was really
big
important for
fan.
them to start. We'll see what happens with him. Weird tie-in with another player that we already mentioned, one of only two Belgian players in the league, Toumani Camara being the other one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
since we've been talking
Still,
about European basketball, just a weird kind of note to throw out there. Also, but I'm actually interested to see they're going to lean on him a little bit more. We're going to hit a point now. This is really the season where this is the last run of this group in some ways because some of these pieces, just because of roster construction and otherwise, are going to have to be traded or moved probably in next off season. So it'll be interesting to see which guys look like they're locks to really be on this group going forward and which guys kind of become more expendable because no matter what the 12, 13 guy thing can only last for so long, even just because some of the talents are going to demand more money.
absolutely. I mean, so they still got to pay Case and Wallace. So, I mean, the guys that become expendable at that point, you look at the contracts they've given out. So we had the 87 million basically that they gave to Hartenstein. That's a team option with the third year. We've already talked about that one. That the Thunder will likely not pick that up, allow him to enter unrestricted free agency because that's when the contracts of Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren, and SGA all kick in. So they're going to go from 21st in the cap to they're going to have they're going to be a second apron team right after this. They extended Caruso 4 years, 80 million in the offseason. And then they also have Dort. I think he's got 2 years left on this contract where he's at 18.5 million. You talked earlier about positional overlap. They have a little bit of that. Case and Wallace is a guy I do not think they're going to let walk, even though he's a very enticing trade piece. I don't think that's one of those guys they can let go. So it seems like one of those casualties is going to be one of Caruso and Dort, and that's going to be a very difficult and unenviable position for Sam Presti to find himself in when it's time to make those decisions.
Yeah, I do not want to be the guy that has to decide. I mean, right now, Cason Wallace has the least impact on a nightly basis of those three, but he's the youngest. He's the most affordable, and he projects the best as an offensive player of those three, probably going forward, as an overall kind of impact player. And
Yep.
defensively, he is not at
Absolute
the level of
monster.
those two. But the problem is those two are two of the 10 to 15 best defenders in the league, and Cason Wallace is one of the 25 best. So it's a
Yes.
really difficult game that you have to play there. And especially, like, what does losing Dort look like to your overall defensive impact? But what does losing Caruso, because of the
Yeah.
energy? And that, I mean, what Caruso did in that Nugget series, granted, the refs were being kind with the whistle, but I don't care. If you get away with it, fine. The fact that this guy was guarding Nikola Jokic for substantial periods of time and standing him up, that will stick in my mind for a really long time.
Yeah, I mean that's the problem because you can point multiple games throughout that playoff where Alex Caruso, with all the defensive metric stuff that he brings, but he'd have a game where he drops 20.
Yeah.
You know, Lou Dort
Shot the ball well.
hits 5 threes
Yeah.
in a game. Well, he was very streaky throughout the playoffs, but the games in which there was was it the game against Indiana? He saved their asses in that series.
Yeah, he
Hit some
had before.
critical
I think he
threes.
had 5 threes in the first half of game. Was that six? Maybe. I
Yeah,
feel like
maybe five or
yeah,
six.
yeah,
But
five or
yeah,
six.
he was critical in those. So once you give up these players, plus you're going to send them somewhere where eventually they're going to be the ones guarding Shea
Yeah,
Gilgis Alexander and Cason Wallace and Jalen Williams because they have the body types and also the experience of guarding them. And do
yeah.
you
And
want to see Lou Dort guarding
now
SGA?
he's got
I
the
don't.
trade secrets that are necessary. Yeah, the whole thing.
I
Absolutely.
don't want to see that at all. Lou Dort on another team is terrifying as a Thunder fan. So yeah, decisions that are going to have to be made. Obviously, like I said, Sam Presti's been preparing for these moments for this contract crunch. Uh, as soon as they started this rebuild and started picking up these players, he knew eventually he was going to have to pay them. So this plan's been in place for a long time, and now they're going to try and maximize this title window before the contracts kick in. So they've got one more year of being cap flexible before it gets real tight.
Now they knew what they were doing, and obviously all the picks that they have leads, and it's Sam Presti. Like, none of us feel worried about this. I fully expect Nikola Topic to look like a guy that, if he can get enough playing time, will compete for a second team all rookie. I don't know if he's going to get enough playing time, but he does provide something they needed, which is ball handling as a primary on-ball player outside of Jay Williams and SGA. That's something they struggled with last year. You saw them try to use Cason Wallace in some of those roles. You're using Isaiah Hartenstein a lot of time to run the offense, but having just another playmaker with the ball in his hands, which is what Topic's profile is, and allowing it to go into pick and roll with him on that second unit, I'm excited to see that. Going back to Dort really quickly, I forgot what it was. He hit those two big threes after being cold. His big games in terms of 3-pointers made were game 1 and game 3. I just wanted to say that in case anybody else was looking at, because I want to make sure we got it right.
No, I appreciate you doing that as always, correcting us wherever we go wrong. I mean, there's not much to say about this Oklahoma City team. They are the odds-on title favorite. They have one of the best coaches in the league. They have one of the best young superstars, a defending Finals MVP and regular season MVP and scoring title holder. So when you have that as your crux, as your fulcrum of your team, it's kind
And,
of a little bit easy.
and your two best players have yet to play their third NBA season, basically. So when you're talking about how much better these guys are going to get, the level of improvement that we can expect out of Chet and Jalen Williams, I said that one has played their third, the other is basically going into his third season.
Yeah.
Expecting that, like, that's the craziest thing to think about with all this is all of these guys, including Shea, should still be going up. Like, Shea is hitting right now the point where we usually see NBA players at their most fully formed versions of themselves. He's going to hit maybe his final form while Jalen Williams and Chet continue to go this direction. Like, Chet is going to be the second best defensive player maybe in the league, depending on what we see from Amen Thompson. But I expect Victor obviously to be the first. But I think Chet's gonna be that conversation. And Jalen Williams is look. I'm doing my top 100, and this is going to be spicy for a lot of people. I have him at number 15 because of what he is as an overall player.
It's really not that spicy considering he was just third team All NBA.
20.
Also, I mean, I'm
20,
just saying. I know some people
yeah.
might not see it that way, but like by every metric, he just got told. I know there's some players who miss a lot of games, and you can make
and that's going to be the conversation for people that want to fight me on it. But 21, 5, and 5.
20.
Yeah, 21, 5, and 5. And he is one of the best perimeter defensive players and one of the most versatile. He can guard 5 positions as a defensive player on a perimeter. Huge. That is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, he dropped a 40-piece in the playoffs with a bad wrist. So, like, yeah, I mean, he is a special type of player that Oklahoma City. The one thing that I feel like the Thunder have never gotten enough credit for is the way they develop talent, because I think there's still a reputation of like, oh, well, they just drafted Durant and Harden and Westbrook and then they get SGA and they took Chet. That's not really, Chet was like one of the better projected players. They develop players all the time. They developed Jeremy Grant. They developed Isaiah Joe from a cast off from like he was a roster cut in Philadelphia and became one of the best 3-point shooters off the bench in the NBA. Like the Thunder find ways to develop these players all the time, and they never really get enough credit for it.
I think in the conversations I have, most people do understand that, because even when we talk about Dort and SGA, like these are players who, like Dort, what he's become is a complete reflection. Yeah. And just even what he looked like as a college player, he's a completely different style of player. He was an on-ball downhill performer in college. Like he was a wrecking ball. He was kind of as SGA's development and Jalen Williams' development. Look, these guys have great talents, but where Jalen Williams was drafted is a complete reflection of what people thought he is versus where he's become now in the Thunder's developmental system. So
I remember the draft grades.
Yeah, maybe it's just because of who I'm talking to, but I think they get a pretty, like, people understand that they have the best organization from both an identifying talent and developing that talent situation in the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, they invest in their, not just their coaching staff, but you can go all the way down to their, the people who prepare their meals. They invest everything in this in this organization and what these players need. And then also they just happen to, be in an area where basketball is the main focus, because Oklahoma City, for as underrated of a city as it is in the United States, it's not exactly a desirable city for nightlife and that kind of thing. So they develop and draft players who they think fit the organizational style, not just their athletic profile.
Yeah.
So I mean, this team is set up for success for the foreseeable future. They're going to be in the mix the same way that a lot of these other teams that have, been contenders the last few years. I think Oklahoma City's finally hitting their stride. Obviously, they just won their championship, and these last 2 years have really kind of proven their model successful. So I'm excited to see where they go out next year.
Now, the really interesting thing with them is going to be a matter of all we've heard about is how dynasties are dead, parity is king, 7 champions in 7 years. Now, first of all, the dynasty is dead thing. The Warriors were a dynasty as far as I'm concerned that just completed being a dynasty in 2022. So I always think that's a little silly. But going back to Oklahoma City, I fully think that they have everything that they need to completely diminish that idea that the dynasty is over. This is a team that is set up, and look, health is always the great equalizer in these conversations and such a difficult thing to predict. But health permitting, this is a team that can go on a 3 out of 5, 4 out of 6 kind of title run, and nobody would be surprised. None of us would be. It would be worth noting because we don't see that kind of thing, but it is totally within their power.
Yeah. I was listening to Zach Lowe and Bill Simmons on Zach Lowe's podcast when they were talking about the 2028 Olympic roster, and Bill Simmons had 3 Thunder players on his men's team. He had Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren, and Cason Wallace. So, I mean, the fact that they could have multiple guys in multiple countries on like starting on Olympic teams
Yeah.
in 2028. SGA and Dort up in Canada. You got Hartenstein playing for Team Germany. Um, Topic will probably be on the Serbian team. And then you've got the American players as well. And,
AJ Mitchell will be playing for
AJ
Belgium.
Mitchell will be playing for Belgium. That's damn right. So, yeah, just a fascinating collection of players.
And
And
the other Jalen Williams is part
he's Vietnamese.
Vietnamese, yeah.
His mother's Vietnamese, and then you got Ousmane Dieng, that's a really deep French team. It's a hard team to get on. I don't think he was on the team this last time.
Speaking of which, just real quick, I mean, this is an aside, but look, we're basketball and we've been jagging for a while. Did you see that Alex Sarr and Bilal Coulibaly both got hurt playing Eurobasket?
I think a lot of people had that concern about Luka Doncic playing over there. It's been really good for him, but
he's always going to play those if he's healthy. That's
exactly. Those players love playing for country, man.
Eurobasket is now on my bucket list.
All right, let's get tickets and go.
All right, we're gonna put a pin in that, but I'm 100% about that.
That's a podcast,
right? All right,
there. Yeah. So prediction time. What you got for their record?
I've got them at 61-21, and that's just because that standard of excellence they had last year is so hard to maintain coming off a championship run where everybody's going to give you your best shot. I wouldn't be surprised if they still 68 seems crazy to me, but if they end up winning like 65 games, I'm not going to be shocked. But a little bit of a fallback, not to earth, just kind of a
reversion to the mean a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Like this means nothing that they win 61 games. It's still going to be dominant. And I just think 68 is so hard to get to. It's a crazy number.
Yeah. I know I said on a previous podcast, I already kind of brought this up, but I mean, just in objectively looking, I have them at 64-18.
Okay.
But like, I could see that I just see 60 to 64. It's somewhere in that range. I have no problem with them falling back a little bit. Teams are going to be gunning for them a little bit more. They've got, like I said, they've got the target on their back. 68 wins is crazy. That's only happened. Like that's a top 10 finish in NBA history of all time. Like that's the kind of records you get whenever you are a deeply historic team. Very few reach that level. 64 is still a lot. It was good for the second best record in the league last year for the Cleveland Cavaliers. So, I 61, 62, 63, somewhere in that range. I mean, avoiding injuries, which is the funny part is that they did avoid injuries 2 years ago when they had 57 wins. And then they kind of had a lot of injuries last year. Hartenstein, Chet, Jalen Williams, and they still improved by 11 games. So the injury luck didn't seem to affect them on their way to a championship. So
it is really absurd. Yeah, you know what? You're almost making me rethink this because considering the number of games Chet missed,
he missed like 30 or 40
during the regular season with that iliac wing, which is the first and only time I've ever heard of that.
Never heard of it before.
But man, my number feels low now that I start to think. Like if Chet plays 60 games, just 60, this defense.
At one point, all three of their centers were injured. The other Jalen Williams, Jay Will, he had a hurt.
J-Dub was playing center for 10 games or whatever it was.
Yeah, he was legitimately their starting center and was fighting for his. They were sometimes bringing Kenrich Williams off the bench to relieve him because he's 6'7", and they're like, well, that guy's kind of tall.
I'm gonna go 65-17. I don't think because to me it's just 68 is such a big effing number. It's crazy even to just pick. I don't think I picked another team in this entire run to win 60 games. So
no, I was looking at the Houston one, and you had them at 56, and I had them at 60, and then
in Cleveland I had dropped down I think 58 or 59.
Yeah, and I think you got the Knicks at 56. So yeah, I'm looking at the numbers here that I was writing down. Yeah, I think you even have Orlando at 55. You don't have anybody over 60 games other than Oklahoma City.
So this is the only team in 60 now 60. Yeah,
I think I just have the Rockets, and I might have said Cleveland wins 60, but I might have also said 58.
Yeah,
so if I can find the notes on that,
that's okay.
Crazy.
Anyways, I'm gonna change it. You've helped change my mind.
I wrote it down.
I think Chet is going to be a defensive monster this year.
Yeah, no, I think he's going to work on his shot release, and he's going to work on being just a little bit more decisive and a little quicker on some things.
Yeah.
And I think that's just third year stuff. I think he could. I mean, he was 16-8 last year. He could legitimately make that leap. This is his third full season.
Yeah, he's a 20-10 talent. Easy.
He could have it. Yeah, exactly.
All right.
All right. Well, that is our Northwest. Now we have done all
it.
the divisions.
We made it. So the next pod, we're gonna have to pick awards.
Oh yeah, for the W or for the
Well, we've already gotten some W awards, and actually, man, we really should have said this earlier. Congratulations, Veronica Burton, for winning the Most Improved Player award. Sorry, we buried that.
That's our bad.
Yeah, she deserved the credit for that much earlier on in this. It was announced today, so that's just part of it.
I must have missed that.
Yeah, it was a couple hours before we went on, so we still got it in. But
it got lost in the trade news again, we also Kobe Buffkin going to the Nets for cash.
Oh, I missed that.
Kobe for cash.
Because what the Nets needed was another player that needs the ball in their hand and another shot first guard. Okay, cool. The Nets don't know what they're doing.
All right. I have no idea what they're doing. They just needed, I don't know what, they just gave Atlanta some money. So there you go.
Next pod, we'll do awards. So we'll just kind of do these as preseason awards. We'll talk about what we're seeing in the WNBA playoffs because we'll be likely in the second round by then. Because we'll record that next week.
Oh, I'll say we will lead the show probably with awards, and then the meat and potatoes will be WNBA playoffs. So that's my. If you're cool with that, I'm cool with that.
Yeah, we'll decide it. You guys don't need to hear the particulars of all that, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah, but we definitely got to talk more about the W because it is playoff time, and we've been trying to get our conversations in about it, but we also need to do our previews. But now that those are done. We are in the heart of the offseason.
We're not in the heart. We're in the tail of the offseason. The regular season is 6 weeks away. It's less than 6 weeks, which is wild. So, yes, while it feels like we just finished this part of the content, now we have all the other stuff that just starts as the storylines start to pick up.
Well, I need the NBA to come back because I already hate fantasy football, and I'm terrible at it. And I will say this before, I know this is already a pretty long podcast, but the Yankees have kind of sucked me back in a little bit. They just
okay.
They did it to me.
We're gonna save that one because I want to wait until we get to playoff matchups with the Yankees before we talk about them again.
I don't think we're gonna win the East, so we're gonna have that
top. You're pretty safe in the wild card right now.
Pretty safe in the wild card. So I think, they just played their toughest stretch of games. They played 12 games. Against the Astros, Tigers, Red Sox, and Blue Jays. And I was texting my dad, and I was just like, can this team go 7-5 in this rough stretch of games against all playoff teams? And they went 7-5. Exactly.
Yeah. Perfect.
So that right there, I was like, well, now they've got 14 games to go against a very easy schedule. And I also predicted they would finish 93-63 or 93-69. And that means they have to go 10-4 over their last 14. So just putting that out there. This was a prediction I made on August 28th. So if they win 10 of their next 14 against some weaker opponents, they got the Twins, the White Sox, and then 2 series against the Orioles.
And they definitely don't stand a chance to bring their level of competition down to the weaker opponents.
Stop it. Stop it. You're going to talk me right back out of this team. Okay. Is there anything you need to put out there into the world? You've been working a lot, buddy. I know you've been out there putting out some pods and putting out some newsletters.
So I've been on my grind. Not only did I just work 8 shifts in the last 8 days, on top of that, 3 podcasts. So Law Murray podcast for anybody that still wanted to get, law rights for the Athletic about the NBA. He also does cover the Clippers. It was a great conversation I had with him last week. I'll link to that conversation with Bob Bellotti about playoff preview. And then yesterday we posted a podcast with David Thorpe from True Hoop. For those that don't know, David, he goes by Coach Thorpe, longtime analyst, professional coach, mentor. He was on ESPN. He's now on True Hoop with Henry Abbott, who also has been doing this for a really long time. And we had a really good conversation about, he wrote a book that was Jazz's basketball. Henry and he both also wrote articles pertaining to kind of Jazz's basketball and the improvisational element and the comping, which means kind of covering for each other as background entities. in basketball that I thought was just a good conversation to talk about with somebody who's very passionate about basketball, and it comes through with him. So I got to learn a lot both from a coaching standpoint with what I'm doing, and as kind of like the journalistic entity, just being able to ask questions of somebody who wrote something I found very interesting.
I love that. Yeah, please go check out Aaron's work. He's been putting out a lot of really good stuff, and I've been very impressed, and I'm very proud of my broadcast partner, my podcast partner. I appreciate you, and I appreciate you as always for making time to do this podcast with me. Um, this is the only thing that I do other than just post a lot on Threads and say a lot of dumb things on there. So yeah, please check out this podcast, the No Gimmies podcast. I know you've already listened to all this. But tell your friends to, pass it along. Subscribe to the Basketball Intelligence Network. It is always worth your time. And if you have anything else, we'll end this podcast the way that we always do by saying adios.